All right. I think we are live here. Good evening to all of you. I'm going to go ahead and get some stuff started here and then we will start. Um all right, while we just get situated here as turning this all on, Den is here to help out with comment moderation as always. So if you have questions, comments during any of the stories tonight, leave them in the YouTube comments. Den's going to make sure I see everything I need to see between stories, after stories, what have you. And if you haven't done this already, make sure you sign up for my newsletter at friendlyatheist.com. I appreciate that. And you can always support this channel at patreon.com/Hemant. We'll just go ahead. I'm just getting everything ready here. Um, I know Den said this in the comment thread already, but I'll talk about the incident from this week first when we're starting this stuff off, and we're just asking everybody, be on your best behavior, people. It's the internet. The internet remembers forever. So be good, and we'll talk about stuff. And if there are any other stories, questions, thoughts you want to talk about, bring them up too. We'll get them in between stories here. Okay. So I figured I would start tonight by talking about the Charlie Kirk stuff. I didn't actually have anything planned to say right now. It's the only story I have tonight where I don't actually have any notes about things I wanted to talk about. But and I've mostly been away from my computer for the bulk of the past 2 days, which makes it hard to really know what everyone is saying. I just know social media is a bad place right now. Everything's a bad place right now. And the obligatory stuff to say is, okay, I disagreed with the guy. I don't want to see what happened to him. I don't think anyone should experience what happened to him yesterday. You know that because everyone's been saying that. One thing I found interesting is pretty much every elected Democrat, every powerful Democrat basically said the same version of that, that it's a horrible tragedy what happened because no one should be the victim of political violence. No one should suffer like that. And it doesn't matter if you agree or disagree with him. And yeah, that all makes sense. What I saw on the right is something completely different. And I think I was trying to figure out what I was trying to think about for the past day or so. Like, what is this guy's legacy? What did he leave behind? And then I think about what all these Republicans, whether they are politicians or pundits, were saying in the wake of what happened. And so many of them, I think, just jumped to the conclusion that this is what the left wanted. This clearly, whoever the shooter was, it was someone on the left who wanted to do this. They instinctively went to ratcheting up the heat, trying to foment more hatred against their ideological enemies. And there's no evidence of any of that, by the way. That doesn't matter, though. They took sides in their battle and they stuck to it. Like, there's no room for empathy or, hey, we know you didn't want this either, even though we disagree on these issues. They instinctively jumped to blaming everyone they could and then saying, you know what, we need more of? We need more political violence, which I feel like that's probably Charlie Kirk's legacy. It doesn't matter what his tone or demeanor was, his instinct and what he got so many college students and Republicans and conservatives to do is to treat everything like a political battle. Everything is black and white, everything is do or die. There are no culture war battles where you could say, well, the other side does make a good point here. No, it's always those people are the enemies, and you have to treat them like that. And if you cede any ground because maybe they make a good point, you can't do that because that means you have lost. And that's what you saw in all these right-wing posts constantly. They just blame the left. They blame the left. And it's like, the world I want to live in is one where people don't have access to those types of weapons, and where mass shootings, one-off shootings. I don't want to live in a world where those things happen at all, and I want the government to take steps so that guns are out of most people's hands, because most people should not have those types of weapons. And if you do, I want you to be registered, and I want you to have to go through training before you can get your hands on those weapons. Meanwhile, the world the right wants to have, the world Charlie Kirk was advocating for so much of his life, is one where mass shootings are just a way of life. It's the price we pay for having a Second Amendment. And I'm not saying that he deserved that because he's been advocating for that, but I'm saying this is the difference between the worldviews here. And this is why I really don't get people blaming the left for what happened, because I don't know, I'm in a lot of those conversations, or I've seen a lot of those conversations, and I just don't see people advocating for a world where the left takes out the right with political violence, with weapons or anything. We don't want to live in that world. So I don't know. That was my first thought, which is, what sort of legacy has that guy left behind? And you see it in the Republican Party, where they treat everyone who's not them as the enemy. They say the worst things about them. If what happened to Charlie Kirk happened to someone on the left, to some prominent Democrat, what do you think the right would have done? Would they have said, well, we disagreed, but that's a horrible tragedy? Or would they have mocked it? Would they say that person deserved it? Would they be celebrating in their churches this weekend? Or if not celebrating, at least saying, hey, this is just God's punishment for what you dedicated your life to. It's just a completely broken system we have right now, where one side has empathy on the left, even if they didn't like the guy, whereas the right treats empathy. Charlie Kirk himself said empathy, or implied that empathy was a dirty word. I was going through some articles that I wanted to point stuff out with. There was one on Slate that I really appreciated, and I wanted to share this with you here, because I think there's no better time to discuss the sort of stuff Charlie Kirk talked about. He celebrated when violence came for his enemies. When Paul Pelosi was nearly killed in his own home, the grace this purported holy Christian man could muster amounted to a homophobic snicker and a request for some amazing patriot to be a midterm hero and bail this guy out. That's a thing that he actually did. He built his following by rewarding cruelty and training his audience to see violence as entertainment. He claimed to have helped in transporting 80 buses full of patriots to fight for this president on January 6th and called for full military occupation of American cities. He mocked protests over George Floyd's murder and spread COVID conspiracies. And this is the one that just got to me. After Zoran Mamdani's New York City mayoral primary win, let me share with you this thing that Kirk tweeted at the time. 24 years ago, a group of Muslims killed thousands of people on 9/11. Now a Muslim socialist is on pace to run New York City. As if one and the other have anything to do with each other. Obviously, they don't. But this is the sort of bigotry and hate that this guy fueled in his followers. I'm surprised by how many people on the right I've seen say this guy was a happy warrior and this guy was proof that you could debate your differences without violence. It's like, what sort of stuff did he debate? What sort of stuff did he say? Just because he says it nicely or he says it with a calm demeanor doesn't mean what he said is okay. If you're using your platform to push bigotry, and again, this tweet right here is a perfect example of that bigotry, then you should be criticized for it. I'm also surprised by how many people on the right, they're like, Charlie Kirk supported free speech. It's why he wanted people to debate him. And yet, if you criticized him, and if you're criticizing him today, there are people on the right who want to screenshot your posts, who want to report you to like education authorities so you get fired. I saw this from Ryan Walters of Oklahoma. He sent this out because he just sends emails to Oklahoma parents and guardians. But at the very bottom here, to that end, if you see or hear anything that could endanger your child or their learning environment, please report it. Any specific, oh, here it is. Let me be clear. Any teacher or employee who attempts to glorify this disgusting act of violence will have their teaching license taken from them and will never step foot in an Oklahoma school again. Listen, if they're glorifying violence, fine. Yes, punish them. But what I've seen is a lot of people pointing out legitimate criticisms of things Charlie Kirk said and did with his life. And those are the things people are trying to get them in trouble for. Because again, Charlie Kirk was for free speech. But if you're saying things he doesn't like, the right's going to come after you. If you're like, oh, you're the right's for free speech. I think books should not be banned. And I want kids to be able to read whatever books they want in a library or a school library. What was the right's reaction to that? Are they on your side for free speech? Of course not. So, of course, his whole life is full of hypocrisy and bigotry, and this is what he advocated for in his life. And I am bothered so much by people who are like, I'm going to miss how he was an advocate for free speech and open debate. Like, no, he wasn't. And also, look at what he was debating. Civil rights should not be up for debate. People's humanity should not be up for debate. I don't know why treating it as if we should debate whether trans people are people or anything like that is something we should applaud. I mean, that's disgusting. I don't understand that for the life of me. I think this is also from that same Slate piece, but I thought this was said very well. If jokes about Kirk's death are dangerous, so were the words he said while alive. Kirk spent years defending policies that tore families apart, cheered on militarized crackdowns, and vilifying entire communities. And if that's what you dedicate your life to, you deserve to be criticized for it during, after, whenever. And it's not just him. I mean, the thing he did that he was so good at is he injected so much poisonous rhetoric into the bloodstream of the Republican Party. And he taught them that, guess what? If you treat people as the enemy, and if you push for bigotry, if you spread this awful, awful bile in all of these situations, if you just take the conservative party line on everything, he wanted to live in a world where people like me would have it worse off because I'm brown. And he wanted to live in a world where LGBTQ people would suffer more and immigrants would suffer more. And he just, if you're not like him and you don't think like him, he wanted you to suffer. I mean, this is the hallmark of every single quotation you have seen being spread from him in the past 24 hours with screenshots about things he said about the Second Amendment. And you can go through his history of things he said. And again, I'm not saying that means he deserved what happened to him. He didn't. But we can criticize the stuff he said because this is his legacy. He made the Republican Party so much worse. Like, it was already bad enough. And now the sort of rhetoric he preached has just become commonplace. And what a sad legacy to leave behind. There are people who talk about his family and you know, the family that's left behind. And yes, that is tragic. But also, that's a lot of people have families. I don't see Republicans expressing any of this concern when the lawmaker from Minnesota got assassinated, or when someone who was brainwashed by lies about vaccines decided to go shoot up the CDC, or, as I mentioned earlier, when Nancy Pelosi's husband was nearly bludgeoned to death by some extremist conservative crazy dude. What did they do? They don't express sympathy about that stuff. They mock it. They laugh about it, or they just pretend it never really happened. And yet, when the shoe's on the other foot, they're like, how dare you say anything bad about this person who just suffered a tragedy? I wish they could understand that I don't want anybody to go through this tragedy, and I don't know why the right wants to see more of it, because the policies they are pushing mean we will see more of these types of tragedies. It is also scary to think about how is the right going to ratchet things up now? Because that's what they always want to do with these situations. They treat everything as a personal attack against them. And so the fact that one of their people was assassinated means they got to take it up another level. And again, what does that mean for our country? What does that mean for people who are not like them? Like, that's a scary, scary thing to think about. It's almost weird to me that one of the ways you could measure Kirk's legacy is by asking which groups of people did he hate? Which groups of people did he say vile, bigoted, mean-spirited things about? Because there's no shortage of that. Like, you could spend so many hours going through the people he said horrible things about. What sort of life is that? It doesn't matter how successful he was among the right, because guess what? Any one of us could easily make a lot of money on the right, especially if you do the sort of shit I do here, where you're just talking to a camera, by just using right-wing talking points. He wasn't better than other people. He just decided it was worth throwing everyone he didn't like under the bus in order to elevate himself and people like him. And Republicans realized, oh, we can all do that? Great, let's do it. It's not the world I want to live in. I mean, I am very curious. I remember saying this or thinking this about Rush Limbaugh when he died, because that guy had a huge audience, made a ton of money, and yet in the years since Rush Limbaugh has died, and I believe Rush Limbaugh was one of Charlie Kirk's early influences, in the years since Rush Limbaugh died, I haven't heard anybody, even on the right, really talking about the guy, because he didn't really say anything memorable. He just hated a bunch of people and used his platform to make you hate other people. That's the legacy he left behind. Pat Robertson, he died a couple years ago. How many times have you heard Pat Robertson's name come up in a totally serious, that guy inspired me, he was influential to me sort of way? I follow religion and politics. I haven't heard people mention Pat Robertson's name. Why? Because the legacy he left behind was just despicable. Doesn't matter how much money he made or how powerful he was. That was his legacy, and that's why people don't really talk about him anymore. And I am wondering, Charlie Kirk, hugely influential, not for reasons I would be proud of in my life, but also I do wonder, a year from now, 2 years from now, how many people are going to be talking about him. And I don't know that people will be, because what's going to happen is someone else on the right's just going to copy his playbook, and there'll be someone else who is doing the same type of stuff he's doing, because there's never a shortage of people who just exist to make you hate other people and say nasty things about it. There's no shortage of people like that. What's hard is finding people who genuinely inspire you and make you want to be a better person. But that's not what he was ever trying to inspire. Is there anything else I wanted to say? I don't know. I think I ran through everything I had. If there are tasteful questions that people want to discuss or do, Den, I'm happy to take them right now. Thank you. The reactions I've seen to this have been disgusting. I know. And there's a lot of, I don't know if it's Schadenfreude or people just releasing on a guy who wanted their life to be miserable. I don't think it makes us, I don't want to be the sort of person who's like, this guy lived to make my life worse, and now that he's gone, I'm going to turn the tables on him and like stomp on his grave or whatever. Like, I don't feel good about wanting to do that. I'm sure it's cathartic for some, but I don't know. I don't know that it really makes any of them feel better either, even though they're doing it. I don't know. I don't think I participated in any of that, but I saw a lot of it too. But also, before you jump on those people on the left who are saying all those nasty things, disgusting things about someone who was just assassinated, remember, there's no shortage of people on the right who have said so much worse stuff about pretty much everyone on the left, and they're still doing it now. Man, just the comments I've seen in the past 24 hours about Ilhan Omar, who has absolutely nothing to do with this. It's been really disgusting. I meant to say nothing good ever seems to result from assassinations. Yeah, like I, as I'm making this, and I don't think there's been any news on this, but like they haven't caught the person who did it, and there hasn't been a motive for who did it. So everyone's just speculating and they're assuming the worst. But they did this when Donald Trump was nearly assassinated too. And it turns out all those initial theories about who you thought would have done this were totally wrong, because the guy who went after Trump turned out to be like a registered Republican, right? And again, I don't know who did this or what we're going to find out about them or anything. But if the shooter was someone on the left, what does this accomplish? Nothing. You've turned him into a martyr for the right. That doesn't help anybody. And if it's not someone on the left and it's someone else who did it for other reasons, again, what purpose does it serve? I don't know how anything is better from this. I don't know how anyone could rationalize that this is a good idea. I mean, in general, no, but also strategically, no. It doesn't make any sense. It's a dumb thing to do. I don't want to see a world with political violence. I want to see bad ideas stomped out in general, which, by the way, is what I'm sure Charlie Kirk would have said he wanted to do as well. Except my idea, my thinking about what good policies we should have are lifting people up. Like, I want to live in a world where my enemies have health care and they can't go bankrupt. And he did not. What else? Maybe this time around, America can have the conversation we liberals have been trying to have with the rest this entire time. Do you mean the conversation about guns and why we need regulations and why we need gun safety measures? I mean, I would love to have that conversation. You know, Republicans don't want to have that conversation after a school shooting because it's always too soon. So when's the time? Is now the time? I mean, I saw someone saying this on social media, and I know they were joking, but Democrats should introduce a bill right now, and they should call it the Charlie Kirk Gun Safety Bill, because we never want that to happen again, and dare Republicans to shoot it down, metaphorically speaking. But again, I wish America could have that conversation, but the right's not going to do anything to decrease gun violence, even as a result of this. They're just going to blame the left, and their response is going to be, we need even more guns to stop the bad guys with guns, because it's always their answer to let's do more of the bad thing, and that will eventually stop whatever thing we're trying to fix. Yes, I do mean about gun regulations and also about universal health care. That includes quality mental health care. Yeah, I wish we could have that conversation. That would be a much better place. We are not in that place. But again, this is the thing. I want to live in a world with universal health care because I want people I don't like to have access to health care, and I want them to be able to live a joyous, happy life. That is not the world the right wants. When they catch the guy, can we trust anything said about motive? Yeah, I don't know. Depends who it is, depends what they say, why they say it, and also who cares, because I don't care what your motive is. What you did was stupid. So I don't know. I guess we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. I'm going to an event in New Jersey in November, but I'm afraid now because it's New Jersey. No, I don't know what event you're going to, but I have heard that even politicians right now are scared to go anywhere. I think Hassan Piker, the progressive commentator, he was going to do a conversation with Charlie Kirk in the near future. And he is someone who is very outspoken on the left. And then you have to wonder, like, are they going to try to retaliate against random other people? Like, I sometimes do public events, and I don't think I am nearly as extreme in any direction as any of these people. But you do have to wonder, like, if I'm saying anything that might offend certain people, how are they going to lash out against me? And I'm a nobody in this sort of world. You know what I mean? So I hope you don't get afraid. I don't know what event you're going to, but I hope it's fine. I hope all these places are taking whatever precautions they need. I just wish more Republicans would care enough to try to do what every other country in the world has figured out already. Everyone except us has figured this one out. Thank you so much for that donation. I support the shit you do here. Aw, thank you. Thanks for that donation. Completely different. Taking a construction management course, and apparently I'm a natural carpentry teacher. As a teacher, any advice for someone potentially considering teaching? It's an awesome profession. If you love what you do, you'll be fine. The logistical stuff you'll figure out. You're practically Jesus at this point already, so I'm sure you'll be fine. No, there's no advice, but I wish more people who are really good and passionate about their subjects would consider going into teaching. Like, it's a good job, and every student knows every class is better. Doesn't matter if you hate the class, every class is better when you have a teacher who's really into it and is fun. Because if they're having fun, you're going to have fun. How was the hike and climb? So I will tell you, and I assume this is the last question, and I'll just move on from all this. Last week, I went to climb Half Dome in Yosemite, and I'd been planning for this for like 6 months. Got a lottery ticket. I applied to be in the lottery to climb Half Dome. I got a lottery ticket. And long story short, I have climbed like 2 out of the 5 legs of Half Dome in the past. And when I did that a couple years ago, it hurt. My entire body hurt. But I've done a lot more hiking since. So I thought, you know what? I think I'm ready for this. I'm really excited to do it. I ended up, long story short, I made it up to Half Dome, like underneath where the ropes are, where you could start climbing the rope up the mountain. And when I got up there, my body was so dead. And I got up there and I'm like, I don't think I have the energy to go up. And I can wait it out for I'll wait up here a little while. Maybe some energy will come back. And it didn't. And at that point, as mad as I was because I made it up that far and I really wanted to go up that mountain, it's like I just don't think I have the energy to do it. And if I go up that thing, I feel like I would be making a very stupid decision for myself. And so I just decided I am not going up. And I hated it, but like I just didn't do it. So I made it up to past Subdome. I was at Half Dome. And then I turned around and walked back. And it's probably for the best because by the time I got back down, the sun was already setting and I didn't want to go back to my car when it was dark. So it took everything out of me. I think it was like a 14-hour hike, 18 miles, but it was all like uphill or downhill. So it hurt. My body was broken for about 2 days. Glad I did it. Sad I couldn't get through Half Dome, but it was cool. I'm glad I tried. That was it. Thanks. Right decision. I hope so. I mean, I know it was, but I'm still mad I couldn't do it because I wish I had the energy I have now because then I would totally go up the mountain. But man, that was so much harder than I thought it was going to be making it up to that point. Oh, while Hemant gets ready. Ooh, we're going to do trivia while I take some water and I'm going to ignore what's going on in the comments. Give me one moment. All right, we are moving on. I have no idea what Den even did there, but I'm going to move on to the next story here. All right. Let's talk about something a little more, a little less serious, I guess. I wanted to talk about this. Maybe you saw this. We'll remove that comment from the screen at the bottom, Den. Yeah, I wanted to talk about this guy. Maybe you have seen this in the news that a teenager just became the Catholic Church's first millennial saint. Yes, look at him. He is 15 years old. His name is Carlo. He just became the first millennial saint. And the only reason I wanted to talk about this, I am not here to trash this 15-year-old, but I am here because it's been a while since there's been like a really famous sainthood. Maybe not since Mother Teresa have people been super interested in who the next saint was. And for those of you who are not Catholic, I thought it would be a little worthwhile to talk about how does a random kid become a saint all of a sudden? Like, what hurdles do you have to jump through? And I wanted to just talk about that for a bit because if you're not familiar with this whole story, Pope Leo the 14th, the new pope, he held a ceremony recently where he basically announced that Carlo Acutis, that's that boy you were just looking at, he would be a saint. And that boy died of leukemia in 2006 at the age of 15, which is a tragedy. I mean, super young and dealing with leukemia, awful, awful story. And one of the things that they mentioned in the New York Times article about this is a lot of people are very excited about the fact that this guy is now a saint. And we'll call him Carlo for the sake of this video. Carlo, the first millennial saint, has become especially well known, and the Catholic Church is hoping his fame will encourage more young people to be active in the church. Because of his use of digital technology to spread the faith, including developing a website in which he listed miracles, he has been nicknamed God's influencer. So they're really trying to hype up, like, you guys, hey, young people who are walking out of church, you know what would draw you in? What? Embracing gay people? No, we're not doing that in the Catholic Church. What? Allowing priests to like have normal lives? Nope, we're not doing that either. Why don't we give you a cool young saint that you can relate to? It's a weird pitch. But anyway, they mentioned that this kid made a website. Guess what? That website is still online. We can look at it. Here's this website that Carlo made, and it's a miracles list. And if you go through this, he just kind of says, here are the different miracles by country. And there's a lot of countries here. And he basically just listed the supposed miracles. I mean, whatever. If I click on a random one, it goes to a scan of a page from like a book where they talk about whatever miracle happened. Listen, it's not the most exciting website, but I'm not here to trash a 15-year-old or however old he was when he made that website, because whatever, I can't do any better. I just don't know that that website was bringing a lot of people to the church, but they're very excited that this kid made it. Here's what you need to know about Carlo. When he was old enough to have any of his own interests, I don't know, how old is that? 7, 8? He decided he really liked computers and he liked coding. And so he's like, what website can I make? And because his family was Catholic, he's like, why don't I make a website that lists this information about the Catholic Church? And so he made that site. Okay, fine. Again, I don't know how many people converted because they saw a list of miracles that Wikipedia totally had already done before him. But okay. So how does this kid become a saint? Simply put, there has to be proof that this kid performed 2 miracles. And 2 things should stand out to you there. I said the word proof and I said the word miracle. And you would think those 2 things contradict each other, but not if you're the Catholic Church. So let's talk about what these miracles were, okay? So the way this worked, miracle number 1, it involved this 4-year-old boy named Mateus. And here's what happened. In around the year 2013, about a decade ago, this boy, 4 years old, his name is Mateus, he's born with like a deformed pancreas. And it was painful. And he couldn't eat any solid foods. And he was constantly vomiting. And it was very disturbing. And because he was so weak, doctors said he could not go through a transplant, even if that was I don't know how common pancreatic transplants are. I don't think that's a typical one, but they said we can't even consider it because his pancreas is too weak. His body is too weak. So it looked like he was not going to live much longer. So hold on to that thought for a second. Now we cut to 2013. 2013, Carlo's mother, she gives a Brazilian priest a piece of her son's clothing. Her son had been dead for several years now, but she gives the priest a piece of his clothing, and the priest puts that piece of clothing in his chapel. And he tells his church, hey, if you need anything, pray to the ghost of Carlo. And here is a relic to remember him by. If you need healing, ask the shirt. Something like that. Well, word of this got around to Mateus's family, so they make a trek to this church in Brazil. And that little boy goes with his family. He's like 4 years old. He kisses the cloth and he prays to the ghost of Carlo to basically stop vomiting. And according to the story, as they began to head home, something weird happened. This is from a Catholic publication called America Magazine. But look at this. According to his mother, Mateus would still feel weak for hours. But after this mass, where he prayed to the ghost of Carlo, he was unusually joyful and hungry. When he got home, the boy ate beef and French fries. He did not become sick. It was the first time in his entire life that this happened. He had been vomiting after eating since he was born. He even rejected breast milk. Since that day, I knew he was cured because of Carlo. The change was too drastic and too sudden. And the boy began gaining weight, and when he went back to the doctor here, the change in the morphology of his pancreas was confirmed by an ultrasound exam. So you see, everybody, the little boy prayed to the ghost of Carlo to like the piece of his sweater, and the boy got better. And doctors said, yep, his pancreas is good now. Okay. I mean, is that totally what happened, or is that just wishful thinking on everybody's part? We don't really know. Like, was it a miracle? Or maybe they misdiagnosed what was going on earlier in his life. I don't know how solid the doctors were when they said this boy has a problem with his pancreas. I don't know. I know I'm brown, but I am not a doctor. So the truth is, is this a proven miracle? No, it's a lot of wishful thinking saying maybe the boy got better because he went like this in front of a relic that was attributed to Carlo. And now they're saying, put a tally mark on the Carlo board. That counts as a miracle. And the Catholic Church does not really care. So because the boy got better after his interaction with the ghost of Carlo, which, by the way, is a logical fallacy so famous, it has its own name, it was declared a miracle. And because of that, the church was like, yep, this counts, and we're going to move forward, assuming this works. And by the way, I wanted to show you one more thing here. This is the journey this miracle took to get confirmed. This is from The Economist. Reports of this supposed miracle were sent to the dicastery. The dicastery is the dicastery for the causes of saints. It's like the office in the Vatican that's in charge of deciding whether something's a miracle. They have an office for this. So reports of the supposed miracle were sent to the dicastery, who handed them on to its medical board, a commission of professional doctors approved by the Vatican. So, of course, you know this is trustworthy. From there, they were passed on to the dicastery theologians, who checked that they aligned with Catholic teaching on miracles, which, by the way, that step totally unnecessary. I just want to hear from the doctors. I don't care what the theologians have to say about this. They forwarded them to the department's senior bishops and cardinals, who, several years after the events occurred, made a formal recommendation to the Pope that he should dub Carlo as blessed. The ceremony in Assisi was held a few months later. Interest in the digital saint spread rapidly among the faithful. Soon, it became a global phenomenon. So basically, the Catholic Church got together and they said, you know what would be really good for marketing right now? Saying that this boy, Carlo, performed a miracle. That's going to win us over on all Catholic talk. They will love this. So let's all agree that this is a miracle. And they said yes. So that was miracle 1. And that means he's officially beatified in 2020. Carlo, the ghost, was now Carlo the beatified in 2020. But that doesn't make you a saint. You need a second miracle. So the second miracle occurred in 2022. And the story there is that there was a young woman named Valeria who was studying in Italy. She was studying in Florence, Italy, and she liked riding her bike. And one day she was riding her bike in Florence, and Valeria fell off, and she suffered intense head trauma, or so I have heard, and it didn't look good. And about a week after she suffered that injury, her mother went to Carlo's tomb in the city of Assisi, and guess what? That was the same day her daughter began to heal. That's it. She started breathing on her own. She started moving her body. She started regaining her speech. According to the website Vatican News, this is what they said. On July 18th, a CAT scan proved her hemorrhage had disappeared. And on August 11th, Valeria was moved to rehab therapy. She made quick progress. And on September 2nd, Valeria and her mother, Liliana, made another pilgrimage to Assisi to thank Blessed Carlo for his intercession. There you go, you guys. We don't actually know how serious the head injury was. And maybe it's possible that once she was in recovery after that injury, it's possible that a week later she was just gonna get better because that was the natural progression of an injury. Like I said before I started this segment, I did a long hike. It seriously felt like I had broken myself. And guess what? 24 hours later, I was sore, but I was better. 2 and 3 days later, I felt pretty much back to normal. Now, when it comes to a bicycling injury, I don't know the nature of her injury. I don't really know how serious it was. Do you think the Vatican publishes her medical reports for everyone to study? No, of course not. So I'm glad she's better. But did she get better because her mother prayed to Carlo somewhere far away? Or did she get better because she had doctors and she had medicine and maybe she would have gotten better no matter what? But guess what? They're really in on making this dude, Carlo, a saint. So that was it. They decided that has to be a miracle. Send it up the Vatican chain and let's see if we could make it happen. So that's it. Those are seriously the two miracles that they have attributed. Like, those things would not have happened if Carlo from heaven had not interceded and taken any of and done his special, I don't know, Catholic magic tricks. One of the other things I found really interesting in all of this is his parents. Carlo's parents have apparently been very open and vocal about the fact that they totally wanted to make their son a saint. And like, look, if you are a parent who had to go through the tragedy of losing a child, that is more than enough grief for anyone to deal with. And of course, you want people to remember your son's legacy. I don't want to begrudge them that. But check this out. This is from an article in the Times, I believe the Times of London here. But in the case of Carlo, both of his parents came from wealthy Italian families. The family of his mother, their family, they ran a publishing firm, while his father controlled an insurance company in Italy. Although she had not been drawn on how much was spent, the mother said she bankrolled the process. Think about this for a second. You know how I said the Vatican has all these offices that need to sign off on the miracle? You think they're just going to, if you said right now, hey, my grandmother was looking after me and I got better, and that must mean my grandmother performed a miracle on me. Hey, Vatican, can you approve that? You think they're going to care about your grandmother? No. Put her in the back of the pile. We'll let an intern take care of that one in the Vatican. So how did they get the miracles for this random 15-year-old boy to get approved, fast-tracked? Well, this family is like, yeah, we just paid them to move him to the front of the line. Like they're a rich family trying to get their kid into an Ivy League school. Look at this. Normally, the cause for a saint, the people behind it have to ask people to fundraise. But in my situation, I do have the means to pay. So that is why I have done. That is what I have done. His parents are basically saying, yeah, we're rich. So we paid the Vatican to make sure his application to be a saint, they went through it really fast. Like, they're openly bragging about the fact that they lobbied to make their son a saint and they paid the Vatican money. It's very indulgency of them all. So that's why this kid's a saint. His parents lobbied for it. They had enough money to get the Vatican to set aside, I don't know, the sex abuse stuff they were working on and get on this. And they did. And it paid off because their kid is now a saint. And, you can always find justification for why he should be a saint after the fact, which is what they have now done. There's one other interesting thing I wanted to point out to you, which is that there was a reporter who was like, now that this kid's on the verge of being a saint, what was his life like? I mean, granted, he was only 15 when he died, but what was his life like? And this reporter spoke to one of Carlo's friends from when he was a kid. Check this out. At his Catholic school, Carlo's reserve on the subject of Catholicism was so complete that when Carlo told his friend he was making a website cataloging miracles, the friend saw it more as an expression of his friend's passion for computer programming than anything else. Because even the friend's like, you care about this? That doesn't seem like you. That seems weird. So even the friend's like, I didn't know you were that religious, dude. I know we go to a Catholic school, but like, calm down. So I just want to make clear, none of this takes away from Carlo's life. I mean, as far as I can tell from everything I've read, this kid was a good, normal kid. Everyone around him seemed to love this kid. That's fantastic. He had these passions. Maybe he wanted to be a computer programmer when he grew up. That's wonderful. And we should honor the life he led. It was too short. I mean, my heart goes out to this kid and his family for what they went through. I wish he could have lived longer. He seems like a really good guy. But I wish people in the Catholic Church would honor that. Honor the life he led and tell other people, hey, you know what? Carlo lived a short life, but look at what he did with it. Because he brought so much joy to the people around him. But apparently that's not good enough. They're not going to rest until this boy is a saint. He has to be good in the afterlife. That's all that matters to them. And I honestly find that tragic that they want to turn him into something supernatural as if that makes his life more powerful than just accepting and acknowledging he led a really good life while he was alive. I mean, and when you hear about the lobbying and you hear about the Catholic Church really trying to turn this kid into a marketing tool, they kind of stripped this Carlo of his humanity. He's no longer just a normal boy who loved computers. He is a supernatural divine being. Like they're repackaging him as some sort of young divine Catholic icon because they wanted to create like a Catholic mascot that young people can relate to. I don't know. That just seems cheap and tawdry to me. His life is not proof of the divine. And I think Carlo deserves better than to be the subject of a PR campaign that involves incense. Okay, what questions do we have here? My son is a doctor. Forget that. My son is a saint. Oh, yeah. You know they're trying to one-up everyone in their orbit. And then the question is, if you're a friend of the family, what do you do about your kids? How do they top sainthood? My kid performed 3 miracles. Beat that, Carlo. Why was Carlo picked at the start for this, though? I think word just got around that this kid died, but he was a good Catholic boy. Like, I don't know if this is a fair analogy, but like sometimes when you're trying to file a lawsuit to overturn a bad law, you want a perfect test case. And in the case of Carlo, where you're like, this is a kid from a Catholic family. He seems like a really good kid, and he died, sadly, tragically, at a young age. But guess what? Hey, Catholic Church, you should honor this guy because he's everything you wish a young Catholic boy would be like. And I think the Catholic Church is like, yeah, we do want to prop this guy up because we can put him on the pedestal. Like, think about the other people working for the Catholic Church. There's not a lot of priests you can say, like, be like this guy. Because that's going to end badly in a lot of cases. But with a 15-year-old kid, there's really not a lot of bad things I'm sure that kid did in his life, right? So I think that's why they wanted to see, can we elevate this kid? Well, we got to find some miracles for him. Well, guess what? Why don't we pass around relics of his clothing so that people can pray to it? And if you do that enough times, among a group of people who are already praying for supernatural things to happen, odds are lottery will happen. Someone will win that lottery, and they say something good happened to me. The only possible reason was little Carlo. Like, that's all they needed. You could play that game with anybody. Is making relics normal before sainthood is even declared? I don't know that it's necessary, and I'm just going off of memory here, but I think when they made Mother Teresa a saint, it wasn't because the miracles attributed to her involved like a relic of her clothing. It was like a picture of her that they kept close to them when they got better in the hospital or something like that. So I don't know how typical it is, but I don't think it's necessary. God is a real piece to not. Yeah, this is a fair point. I forgot to bring this up, so I appreciate, Robin, that you brought this up. This boy died of leukemia when he was 15. Where was God then? Of course, God was nowhere to be found for obvious reasons. And now we're using him to heal the pain of other people? Like, hey, God, could you like make Carlo not die of leukemia? That would have been way better. Because I'll tell you what, I think that 4-year-old Mateus and that student Valeria, I think they would have gotten better on their own with the doctors and medicine they already had access to. So maybe if you wanted to do something good, go back in time and save Carlo. I heard someone say his body was embalmed. Was that just social media bullshit? You know what? I can't remember exactly what they did. They did, I think, put his body on display and they wanted it to look human-ish, which is a normal thing that happens at like open casket funerals and things like that. I'm not sure specifically what they did or honestly if it even mattered, but I think they wanted people to be able to see Carlo lying in a coffin or something like that. But I don't think that was bullshit. Mother Teresa, money laundering also brought her sainthood. Was there money laundering involved with the Mother Teresa situation? I don't remember there being that because, again, with the Catholic Church, who are the good ones in the Catholic Church? Like, trust me, I'm well aware of all the bad things that Mother Teresa has done. I know Christopher Hitchens wrote his whole book about the problems with Mother Teresa. But I feel like she's one of those people, she would not have had to pay her way into sainthood or other people would have fundraised for her. I'm pretty sure they were already on top of that one. But thank you for that donation. There's your trivia question while I pull up stuff for the next story. Give me just 1 second here. Don't worry, these tabs are loading. Okay. I'm going to jump to the next story here. Do you all remember earlier this year when Attorney General Pam Bondi decided to convene a task force in the Department of Justice to study anti-Christian bias in the federal government? This was something Donald Trump really wanted to do. He said he was going to put together a group of people whose job it was to eliminate anti-Christian bias in the federal government, which is a weird thing to do because, like, where are people biased against Christians in the government, much less a completely Republican government? Are they mad because only 98% of elected Republicans are Christian? Like, what the hell are they talking about? And if they want to claim Christians are the victims of bias, who do you think has it better than Christians? It's not atheists. It's not Muslims. Like, who do you think is doing better than Christians right now? No idea. So anyway, this task force to eradicate anti-Christian bias, they had their first meeting back in April. And right away, when you look at the guest list, it's not hard to figure out where they're going with this, because the guest list included Pastor Paula White Kane, who was one of Trump's personal pastors because she has the look. It had homeschooling advocate Michael Ferris, who founded a fundamentalist Christian college and one of those groups that advocates for homeschooling and no regulation whatsoever. They had the guy who's running Liberty University, like the guy who came after Jerry Falwell Jr. So when you invite those people to your group meeting, it's not hard to figure out what conclusions they want to reach, right? And I personally thought, what sort of grievances are they going to have? Are they going to get mad that people said like happy holidays in the government instead of Merry Christmas? Because there are no real examples of anti-Christian bias. So what the hell are they going to complain about? Well, this week, guess what happened? They finally released their report. Here it is. The initial report by the task force to eradicate anti-Christian bias. And look at the date on here, because it says it's dated June 6th, 2025. But I'm not kidding. It just got released this week, like 3 months later. And it's 49 pages. And honestly, it's not even put together well. You can tell, and I am speculating here, but I think Pam Bondi went to all the cabinet departments and said, you guys, I need you to submit a 1 to 2 page report of all the ways your department under Joe Biden discriminated against Christians. And I need you to send me your pages and I'm going to put them together in this report. And the thing is, this is very much a ninth grader writing an essay on Microsoft Word, sort of, this is what they're putting together. And you just see examples of anti-Christian bias. I just want to scroll to a random page here. Department of Defense, what happened? Here's their top line list, bullet point 1, bullet point 2, and then here's what we're doing about it. And you scroll down some more. Department of Education, bullet point 1 and 2, here's what we're doing about it. There's no cohesion to this whole packet of information. But I did want to talk about some of the examples they listed in here, because it's freaking hilarious what they consider anti-Christian bias. And I'll give you some examples of this. So here is one. Let's jump to this page right here. This is the Department of Housing and Urban Development. This is the one where Donald Trump finds his one black friend and he's like, where can I put you in the cabinet? Housing. And he did it in his first term and he's done it multiple times now. Anyway, what's their example of anti-Christian bias? Look at number 2 here. Targeted removal of holiday posts. During the 2023 Easter season, a public affairs officer was instructed to take down posts on an official HUD Office X account related to Palm Sunday, Good Friday, and Easter because they potentially violated the Establishment Clause and other federal regulations. However, similar posts in celebration of Pride Month, Ramadan, and Diwali, among others, received no scrutiny. I mean, first of all, if this is the worst thing that's happened in housing and urban development, is they made someone take down some posts on Twitter, that is not discrimination. But okay, now I was curious. What the hell happened with these posts? Because I have no idea. So here's an example of one they decided to keep. This is under the Biden administration. This is a post made by HUD. You could see it's HUD-GOV. This is, I assume, on Instagram. But it says, Happy Pride from HUD. And it's a rainbow background. And it says at the bottom, Pride Month is a time to honor and celebrate the many strides our nation has made to advance the rights of the LGBTQIA+ community across ... I mean, fine, I guess. I don't know. Does this make you happy to see? It's fine. I'm glad they did it. Okay, so they kept that one up. And they should. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it, right? So then I would love to show you what they posted on Palm Sunday or Good Friday or Easter Sunday. But guess what? They took those posts down, and the report that Pam Bondi has just released did not include screenshots of what they took down. So here's my theory. The posts on Good Friday and Easter Sunday, Palm Sunday, Good Friday, and Easter, I wonder if they included Bible verses or comments about Jesus rising that endorsed a religious belief as opposed to just saying, hey, everyone, happy Easter for those who celebrate. Like, if they did that, I don't think that would be a problem. But I'm guessing someone in the Biden administration was like, here's a Bible verse to go along with why we are celebrating Good Friday. And if they did that, I get why that person might have been asked to take it down. I wish I could show you what they did, but I can't because it's not there. But while I was digging up stuff for this story, you know what I did find that was not mentioned in this report that just came out? This is something that came up during the Biden administration from HUD. This is on Facebook, Department of Housing and Urban Development. There's no place like home for the holidays. Merry Christmas from the Department of Housing and Urban Development. And there's a whole post that says Merry Christmas from HUD from 2021. And again, I'm just saying, if there was anti-Christian bias going on in that department, you would think you would not see a post that honors a very specifically Christian holiday. But this was not mentioned anywhere in the report. They just said the Easter one was taken down and that's anti-Christian. You can't do that to us without telling anybody what that post said. So this is an example of the worst kinds of discrimination against Christians in the government, according to that specific department. Okay, what about the Department of Education? I have talked about this before, so I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this, but the report from the Department of Education listed two things on there that I found really surprising. Let me see if I could pull up one of them. Yeah, check out this right here. I'll share this with you. I'm going to jump to there's 2 bullet points under the Department of Education. I'm going to jump to number 2. Targeting of school boards. The Biden administration's book ban coordinator role within the Education Department investigated school boards for removing age-inappropriate materials from school libraries, typically in response to religious objections by parents. Now, they don't give us examples of any of this. There are no details about this, but basically what happened is during the Biden administration, when all these right-wing school boards are trying to ban books from school libraries, the Biden administration decided, hey, we should appoint someone to kind of just oversee all this, because if someone goes too far, maybe we, the federal government, can do something about it. And by the way, the books that people want to keep in school libraries are not age inappropriate. Usually the ones all these right-wing parents are trying to get rid of are like, here's a book, a young adult novel about a student who's learning about sex for the first time. Or maybe this person is LGBTQ, and those are the books they want to get off the shelves because they think the existence of those people is inappropriate. So anyway, what did these book ban coordinators do? I don't know. It doesn't matter. The existence of the book ban coordinator, they say, is anti-Christian discrimination because they got nothing. Let me jump to that other bullet point, though, because I've talked about this before. Weaponization of policies targeting Christian higher education. The Biden administration weaponized the Department of Education and attempted to impose record-breaking fines on some of the nation's largest Christian universities, including Liberty and Grand Canyon University. Again, I've made a video about this before. I'm not going to talk about it again. But in the case of Liberty University, which was hit with a $14 million fine, why did the Biden Education Department go after Liberty? Because Liberty violated something called the Clary Act. What's the Clary Act? It's basically the rule that says, hey, if your school takes money from the government, including student loan payments, which Liberty relies on, then you have an obligation to keep students safe on campus. And that means students need a way to safely report sexual violence. And the school needs to let kids know if there's a threat on campus. That's the bare minimum, and Liberty wasn't doing that. Someone who spoke to the Washington Post about this said it was the single most blistering Clary report I have ever read, ever. because the second largest Clary Act violation fine went to Michigan State under that guy, Larry Nasser. You can Wikipedia him if you don't know about him. And that fine was $4.5 million. Liberty was putting students in so much danger that they were fined $14 million. And guess what the Trump administration did? They said, we're erasing that. You don't. I'm sorry, I take that back. They were fined $14 million. I think it already happened, so the Trump administration could not take that back. But again, is that weaponizing the government against a Christian university? No. They punished a university that was breaking the rules, and this one happened to be Christian. What about the other one, Grand Canyon State University? The Biden Department of Education fined them $37.7 million. Why? Because they said Grand Canyon University lied to students about the cost of tuition if you were taking certain PhD programs. So basically, they said it was going to cost you this much. They lured you in if you were taking that program. And then they said, actually, if you want to get your PhD, it's going to cost that much. And now you're in it. You can't just transfer. You're already in the program, so you got to pay this extra money. And it was so egregious that the school lied about tuition costs on its website, its contract, the net price calculator that students could use online to figure out how much they have to pay, and marketing material. That's why the Biden administration punished that school. And guess what the Trump administration did? And I can say this definitely this time. The Trump administration said, we're just going to hit Control Z on that whole punishment. So Grand Canyon University, you're fine. You don't have to pay anything. We're going to wipe that $37.7 million fine away. Go ahead and keep lying to students. So I want to go back to what the report said. This report from Pam Bondi said, this one's from Linda McMahon, the wrestling lady. What does the Department of Education say? Findings of anti-Christian bias? Well, you punish 2 Christian universities that deserve to be punished. And also, you hired somebody to oversee the book bans, which is a good thing, like overseeing the book bans. That's their example of anti-Christian bias. So it's not. Those are Christian schools that got punished for hurting their own students. Here's another one. This one was just fascinating to me. Okay, the Department of Defense had their special thing that they were mad about too. Let's look at this one. Here we go. Here's the page from the Department of Defense. Look at bullet point number 2. Cancellation of pastoral care for service members and veterans. During Holy Week in 2023 at Walter Reed National Military Medical Center, they issued a cease and desist letter to a community of Franciscan Catholic priests that had been providing pastoral care to service members and veterans for nearly 2 decades. After canceling its contract with these priests, the center awarded the contract to a secular for-profit entity, leaving inadequate pastoral care for Catholics during Holy Week. Okay, so basically there were like Catholic chaplains helping these patients at Walter Reed, which is like the military hospital. And what? The hospital decided to get rid of them and hire subpar chaplains for the veterans? I mean, that sounds pretty bad. Guess what actually happened in that case? Because it wasn't that. Basically, what happened is that the religious group that was providing these chaplain services, their contract with Walter Reed expired in 2023 on March 31st, which coincidentally happened to be like right before the week of Easter. That's what happened. Their contract just expired. But the priests, the chaplains, were like, well, it's a big important time in the Catholic calendar, so maybe we should stick around Walter Reed to help these patients, which is a nice thought. And the hospital said, sorry, you can't be here because we have no working relationship with you right now because you don't have a contract. So you can't be on the premises. And that's why they issued the cease and desist. Like, you need to get out of here. We already issued a contract with this other group that also provides chaplain services. Nothing nefarious is happening here. And the Catholic group that got kicked out there, they're saying, I'm sorry, Who are these other chaplains you just hired? They are not from our organization, so they are not good enough. Even though they didn't explain why these other chaplains were subpar. They just said, sorry, those people don't count. And this became a whole right-wing media firestorm. And then guess what happened after that? After all this backlash, after all these people are like, how dare you kick out these other priests? Even the archbishop got involved here. This is a story from the Catholic news agency. It is incomprehensible that essential pastoral care is taken away from the sick and the aged when it was so readily available, said this archbishop in a statement a week after that chaplain group was basically kicked out. This is a classic case where the adage, if it is not broken, do not fix it, applies. But it was broken because they didn't have a contract. It had expired. Well, guess what happened after all of this? Well, let's cut to like 2 months later. Now it's May. The Defense Health Agency reopened bidding on the contract in May. It awarded the new contract to the original chaplains group, the Franciscans, on June 8th. So 2 months, not even. Yeah, like 2 months after that whole thing happened, they reopened the bidding. The chaplain group won the bid. They got the contract to provide chaplain services to patients, and everything was fine again. So you tell me, the story I just told you, is that anti-Christian bias, or is it, sorry, these people didn't have a contract for a little while, and eventually the hospital said, okay, now you do have a contract, so you can come back. This is what Pam Bondi and the Trump administration is claiming. These are the worst things that have ever happened to Christians. Okay, here's the worst one when it comes to the Department of Health and Human Services, because they say the Biden administration persecuted a Catholic hospital. And I'm just going to tell you the story because the thing they wrote is really long. But basically, the report cited what happened to the St. Francis Health System in Oklahoma. That hospital, because it's a Catholic hospital, it has a chapel inside the hospital. Okay. Inside that chapel is a lit candle because people might go there to pray. And if you're in a Catholic church or something, you might want your candles. It's what they do. So in 2023, the Department of Health and Human Services has an inspection from the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. They just want to make sure the hospital's like doing what it's supposed to do because they do get reimbursed for these services. And the inspector went to the chapel and he sees this candle in the hospital. And the reporter, the regulator, basically says, you guys, according to the rules of like the government, you're not allowed to have a lit candle with an open flame burning unattended 24/7. Which, think about that. That makes sense. Right? You don't want an open candle that's just lying about in a hospital and no one's around to watch it to make sure nothing bad happens. Yeah, that kind of makes sense. And the regulator also said you're not allowed to have an open flame within 15 feet, 15 feet of oxygen delivery equipment, which kind of makes sense. You don't want to cause an explosion in the hospital. And it's not that they had like an oxygen tank lying around there, but let's say you're a patient at the hospital and you want to visit the chapel where there's an open flame and you have like respirators or something like that. It could be bad. So basically, the regulator said, you need to fix this. I don't care how you do it, but you got to fix this. And right-wing groups went ape shit over this. One hospital executive said, we are being asked to choose between serving those in need and worshiping God in the chapel, but they go hand in hand. Our work depends upon our faith in the living God, and the sanctuary candle represents this to us. By the way, let me show you a picture of this candle that they have, because this is from the lawsuit they filed against the government. Like, there's the chapel, and there's the candle just lying there, waiting for someone to come by and make the whole hospital explode or something. So this is what they were complaining about. And guess what? So the chapel, the hospital system, and all these right-wing groups, they sued the government, and both sides settled it out of court. And I don't know what the nature of the settlement was, but I will tell you the candle is still there in the hospital. So, is it anti-Christian bias? No, it's the government saying maybe you should not have a fire hazard lying around in a hospital. That's it. I don't know. There was a quick one I will just mention from the Department of Justice. They mentioned that there's the city of Troy, Idaho, that said a church cannot build in a part of our community. But I've covered that story too. And the reason the city told a church, which happens to be the church of Douglas Wilson, who is basically a cultish leader from Idaho, they wanted to expand from Moscow, Idaho. So they wanted to build a church in Troy, Idaho. And the city of Troy said, you can't build a church here. Is it because it's Doug Wilson? No. The city said, we have 2 blocks in our small town where we want to make it a commercial district where people can come here, park here, spend money here, and then get the hell out, right? Because that's good for building our economy. And so we blocked off 2 blocks where you can't build stuff that doesn't make money. And the church counts. You can't build a church right here. If you want to build it over, like a block over, that's fine. And they got sued over this, and that lawsuit's still working through the courts. And I honestly, as I said in the video when I made it, I don't know how the lawsuit will end up, because maybe the town didn't cross its T's and dot its I's. But this is cited as an example of anti-Christian bias. When again, the city has an argument that has nothing to do with religious discrimination. And I want to point out one last thing. The FBI chimed in. Kash Patel chimed in. And he said there was a Biden-era memo that asserted that radical traditionalist Catholics are domestic terrorist threats. And they suggested infiltrating Catholic churches as threat mitigation. And I have also covered that story on this channel. The long version of the short version of that long story is that there were a couple of FBI agents who said, there's a guy we are watching because we have reason to believe he is a threat to our nation. And he had said some things. And then they said he basically joined a local church. It calls itself Catholic. It wasn't actually a Catholic church, but this guy joined it. And then they said he started recruiting members from that church for a potential attack. That's why they are following this guy. And they wrote this up in a report. And they said there might be a link between this guy and his extremist church that he goes to. But they pointed out that this guy has been an extremist long before he joined this particular church. Guess what? Those FBI analysts also found that in other parts of the FBI, they were also looking at a couple of people who belonged to the same type of church. And so when they're writing their report, they're pointing out, hey, maybe there is something here we should be looking at. Maybe this particular type of church is breeding some of these extremists because they're all finding each other there. And maybe that's something we should keep an eye on. Now, that report was like rough draft form. It's not meant for public inspection. And when they actually submitted it to their higher ups, the FBI basically said, this report is bad. You're not allowed to do certain things you wrote in here. Some of the things here won't fly. But they never got to that editing stage because the rough draft of that report got leaked to the right-wing media. And the right-wing media took it and said, the FBI is targeting Catholic churches. Like, no, they were not targeting Catholic churches. They were targeting some extremists who went to a particular kind of church that wasn't even really Catholic. So again, that is not anti-Christian bias. That was our government's law enforcement doing their job and trying to document a potentially dangerous phenomenon. So again, this is what they did. All their big examples of anti-Christian bias in the report are not systemic attacks on Christianity. They're just examples of like Christians behaving badly and then getting punished for it. Because according to the Trump administration, Christians should be allowed to get away with anything they want, and who cares if it violates the law? And yet, the report says at the very end of this Pam Bondi report, look at what it says here. And I do want to show you this. Where is it? I want to make sure I'm reading you the right part here. Here we go. This is on page 49 of 49. Conclusion. Though these investigations remain in their early stages, the evidence uncovered is unmistakable. During the Biden administration, people of faith, particularly Christians, were repeatedly subjected to anti-religious bias at the hands of their own government. No, they weren't. I promise you, the Catholic Joe Biden was not sitting around saying, how can I punish Christians? It's just not a thing that happens. What this reminded me of, I don't know if any of you had to sit through God's Not Dead 1, the one with Kevin Sorbo. But if you watched God's Not Dead, that movie, which is obviously, and they're not hiding it, it's a work of fiction, but they're saying it's based on a thing that really happens or whatever, like the philosophy professor who's fighting with the strong Christian student. At the end of that movie, in the credits, they basically say there are a bunch of Supreme Court cases and other legal cases that are actual examples of Christian discrimination. But if you actually look at any of those cases, it's exactly the same story where it's like, no, those are not examples of Christians being discriminated against. Those are examples of Christians doing something illegal and people fighting that out in court. Like, it's the same thing. These people have no examples of bias against Christians. They have no examples of discrimination. So they make up stupid shit because they know Christians are not reading the report. I did because I'm a loser. But they know that their people are never going to read the report. They're never going to dig into any of these stories. So they can just say whatever they want. And guess what? To some extent, that plan worked, because this is the headline I saw on Fox. DOJ task force finds numerous instances of anti-Christian government bias under Biden. Yeah, no, they didn't. They said there were numerous instances, but none of those actually check out. But they fed the report to Fox. They got the headline they wanted. They know none of the people who see the headline are ever going to dig into any of these stories. And so when it comes to what are they going to do with this task force now, I'll tell you what I think the answer is. I think the task force goes away, never has another meeting because there's nothing for them to do, because the only reason the task force existed was for this headline to appear. And now that it has, and the report is out, they've done what they wanted to do. Because it's not about eradicating anti-Christian bias, because it doesn't exist. It's about trying to lie to people and tell them Christian bias against Christians exist. And they'll use this flimsy thing because they know their people don't do research. And that's it. Like, it's just flat out lies. Like, this whole charade shows you the Biden administration wasn't actually waging war on Christianity, but we are now living in a regime full of conservative Christians who just want to weaponize victimhood to shield themselves from accountability, right? All of these stories, they all dissolve under scrutiny, when really all that was going on is Christians were being held to the same standards as everybody else, which is the one thing conservative Christians hate. They do not want to be treated the same as everybody else. That is not persecution in any sort of way. That is evidence of Christian entitlement. These people, these Republicans, they don't give a damn about freedom of religion. They want freedom from consequences. And they think they should be able to operate above the law at any times. Listen, if there is or was actual bias against Christians, guess what? I'm against that. I want to see that end. I don't think bias should be around for any of these groups. And if it happens in the government agencies, good, put a stop to it, no matter who's getting victimized here. The problem is there is this underlying theory that Christians suffer more discrimination than other religious groups, and that's why it must be eradicated, that bias, but none of that is true. So if these are the best examples the government has of anti-Christian bias, they have nothing. Nothing. All right, I'm done with this stupid story. What other questions you got here? Wait, they're complaining that they weren't allowed to ban enough books? Yup, and they're really mad that someone from the Department of Education was watching over them as all these school boards tried to do that. Starting to think epistemology education is the way out. I mean, anytime anyone says more education is the way out, I feel like no. I feel like most people are getting a fine education, but they just don't care, or they graduate from grade school or high school and they throw it all away because they're listening to professional victims complain about stuff. So I wish you were right. This is ridiculous. People are confronting death every day in the hospital, and these people are worried about a candle. Not only worried about a candle, they're like, can we put a candle in a hospital where it's a potential safety hazard? And they're fighting in the court to make sure they can do that because their religious freedom says we got to put hospital patients in danger, maybe. Christians are overrepresented in our government. What are they talking about? I don't know, man. You're right. They are overrepresented in the government. Again, I'm not making this up. The actual numbers I have here, Christians make up 98% of elected Republicans in Congress. They make up 87% of Congress overall. So, yeah, I mean, again, if Christians think they're being discriminated against, I am happy as an atheist. I will speak on behalf of all atheists. I will trade places with you because you really have it rough. Do you want to trade places with us? This is a nationwide list going back how far, and this is all they got. I mean, this report on anti-Christian bias was supposed to cover things that happened during the Biden administration, and yes, this is the best they could come up with. All right, do your trivia question. I'm getting some water here. All right, I'm going to jump ahead to this story. This story may be the one that I went down the biggest rabbit hole for over the past 2 weeks. I spent so many days trying to wrap my head around what the hell was going on because it just seems so absurd. So, we're talking about the government of Quebec in Canada because they're on the verge of introducing a bill that would ban public prayer. So if Muslims want to pray in a city park in Quebec, that might be illegal soon. And if you're a Christian who wants to sit down as the sun is rising and pray to God, you wouldn't be allowed to do that either. And the thing about this potential bill is they are using Islamophobia as justification for why they want to do it. And because they are proposing this, they have actually brought together a slew of religious groups and non-religious groups and church state separation groups who are like, that's religious oppression and we are all against that. And also, Canadian law says this is going to violate our human rights, which are guaranteed to us under the Canadian Charter. And so, again, I know I'm not a Canadian. I know I'm going to screw up elements of the story. I'm sorry. I'm doing my best here. But basically, Quebec has been pushing mandatory public secularism for a while now. And in 2019, they passed something called Bill 21. You can Google this stuff and look up Bill 21. It's wild. And it basically says Quebec is a secular state, and therefore, no one who works for the government is allowed to wear visible religious symbols, just the way you're not allowed to wear, I love this baseball team or whatever. I don't know. No element of your personality can be seen. You are all one. Whatever. So they banned police officers and lawyers for the government and teachers who work at schools from wearing anything showing off your religion. So, like, if you're a Christian who wears a cross necklace, not a big deal. You can hide that, right? Not a big deal. You're still wearing it. No one sees it. But what if you're a Muslim woman who wears a hijab? What if you're a Sikh who's wearing a turban? You don't have anywhere to put that. So a lot of critics of Bill 21 are like, you're just trying to push brown people basically out of doing any of these government jobs, because when they're practicing their faith, they have to wear these visible elements of their faith. By the way, that would also apply to Jewish people who wear yarmulkes or something like that. And that is essentially what they did. And here's what's amazing about that bill. This is one headline about it from 2019. Even though a majority of Canadians said that's a horrible idea, most people in Quebec supported it. And according to that article, it said 64% of people who live in Quebec support Bill 21. That's from 2019. I don't know what the number is at now. So anyway, here's what's happened more recently. Quebec's government, they commissioned a report on the state of secularism in the province, which honestly, that sounds like a thing I would be fully in support of. And this report is supposed to document the phenomenon of infiltration of religious influences. And they also want recommendations on how they can strengthen Bill 21. And they were doing this for a couple of reasons. Why do they want this report? They were doing it for a couple of reasons. One is that last year, Muslims they requested and received a permit to hold a morning prayer in the city of Montreal. I was told it was pronounced Montreal. I don't know anymore, but the American pronunciation is Montreal. Let's go with it. So anyway, Muslims wanted to pray on one of their religious holidays. They asked a permit so they could do it as a group in like a park in Montreal. They got it. It was fine. And the mayor defended that. The mayor defended giving the permit by saying, well, Christians are allowed to hold a public event in a local park. And the mayor said, if we allow an outdoor mass for one religion, we must also allow it for another religion. Yes, that is exactly right. But then that mayor added, it's not something we want to see more of. It's really very limited. Which, why did you have to say that? That was unnecessary, but all right. Okay, so that's one reason these people in Quebec are very disturbed by public prayer of any kind. But the real reason, the bigger reason, is that for the past several months, a group of people belonging to Montreal for Palestine, with the number 4 in the middle, a group called Montreal for Palestine has been holding peaceful protests against the Israeli government's genocide in Gaza. And Muslims are a part of these protests. And so Muslim prayers have been a part of that protest. And because they are in a very public area in the city of Montreal, they also happen to be near a Catholic church. It's called a Notre Dame Basilica. I will say a spokesperson for the church, I think a reporter asked the spokesperson for the church, like, do you like having all these people? They're brown. Do you like having them all doing these protests outside your church? And the spokesperson for the church, to this person's credit, said it's a legitimate exercise of freedom of expression in an emblematic public space of Montreal. That's awesome. That's a great thing to say. Now, is what they are doing, the protesters, is what they are doing free expression, or is it a religious threat? Because that's really been the heart of this conflict. And what is the solution here? Do you want to prevent religious expression in a public space, or just go after, gatherings that block traffic because that's annoying, or they're too loud and they're violating noise ordinances? That might be annoying too. The thing is, there are already laws in the books that allow local law enforcement to go after people who are blocking traffic or disturbing the peace. So, just use those laws if you want to go after people. But a peaceful protest that happens to include religion, who cares? Who is that harming? I don't know. So anyway, they do this report. There are 2 lawyers who are tasked with leading the charge for this, and they finally issued their report a couple of weeks ago at the end of August. I would love to share it with you, but it's written entirely in French. There is no English version because it's Quebec. You have to understand, I spent so much time running this report through like Google Translate because I wanted to see for myself what it said. And some of the recommendations, there were like 50 recommendations. Some of them make a lot of sense. For example, one of them that I really liked, it said, we need to stop telling parents in advance in public schools that their kids are going to learn about sex education. Like at schools, they would send these warning letters home. Like, hey, parents, your kids are going to learn about this. And why are you doing that? No one sends warning letters home saying, hey, parents, your kids are going to learn about algebra. And by sending them this warning about sex education, you are stigmatizing sex education. So stop sending that warning letter home. You are playing into the hands of like conservative Christians who see that as a bad thing. I think that's a smart recommendation. So fine. One of the other recommendations goes in the other direction. I don't like it. They said, you know how we've already banned teachers from wearing hijabs and turbans and things like that? Why don't we also extend that ban to daycares and childcare centers? Like, we're just making it worse. We're trying to really weed out Muslims from holding positions in like government subsidized daycares. That's just flat out bigotry at that point. But that's not the thing I wanted to mention. So what about the question of public displays of religion? So the prayer in public thing. So the lawyers who wrote the report basically said, and I'm paraphrasing here, that local municipalities should basically figure out what they want to do about public prayer. And they said the reason they're kind of hesitant about this and saying we shouldn't have one rule for everybody, the reason it's patchwork, is because there's a lot of caveats to consider. They even quoted a social scientist who told them, quote, a strong vision of secularism is legitimate and desirable for Quebec. However, he considers that such a vision is not incompatible with demonstrations by religious groups. Yeah, makes sense. Like religious demonstrations and rallies are not contrary to public secularism. They're a part of it. Like, I don't want to ban religion. I just don't want the government endorsing religion. I don't want one religion treated better or more true by the government than any other religion, right? And the report also pointed out that if you pass a bill to ban public prayer, there's a lot of questions you're going to have to answer. And this is my favorite part of this report, okay? Because they're asking all these questions. Would yoga be banned? What if they're trying to have like yoga lessons in the park one morning? Is that allowed or is that considered religious? What about groups that say watching the sunrise is a spiritual event? Are you going to ban that? What about religion? What if you're having a wedding in a public park and there's religion that's a part of that wedding? Are the police going to like bust in on the wedding and stop it? What about a St. Patrick's Day parade? Is that going to be allowed? What about the spiritual practices of indigenous people that are meant to happen outside, like pipe smoking and powwows? What about meditation? Also, who the hell is going to enforce all this? Who is walking around the streets of Quebec saying, I'm sorry, what were you doing there? I saw your eyes closed for more than 4 seconds. Come with me. Like, these are all important rhetorical questions. So again, here's what they actually said in the report. This is their formal recommendation. This is number 36 on the list. Municipalities must incorporate in their secularism policies a framework for collective religious events within their territory in accordance with their regulations. Basically saying secularism is important, but it's up to you all to figure out how you actually want to do this. I thought that was a fairly moderate recommendation. And here's the thing, after that report came out, government officials decided, well, now that we have the report, we're going to go all in on banning public prayer. So let me show you this dude right here. This is a tweet. There we go. This is from Jean-Francois Roberge. And his job is basically an enforcer of secularism. He's the minister responsible for laicity. He said in this tweet, look at this. The proliferation of street prayers is a serious and sensitive issue in Quebec. Imagine me with a French accent, by the way. Last December, our government expressed its discomfort with this increasingly prevalent phenomenon, particularly in Montreal, where all the people live. The Premier of Quebec has given me the mandate to strengthen secularism, and I am firmly committed to fulfilling the mandate diligently. Thanks to the reflections conducted in caucus, blah, 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 this fall, we will therefore table a bill, which in Canada means we're going to introduce a bill to strengthen secularism in Quebec, including by prohibiting street prayers. So this dude is like, now that we saw the report, we don't care what they said. We're just going to ban street prayers anyway. Who cares what the recommendation said? None of you read the report. No one reads anymore. We're going to go ahead and do that. I mean, forget leaving it to local communities. He wants it across the entire province. And they're not going after just like annoying protesters who are violating like traffic laws. No, he wants to go after everybody, right? And if you think that is overly harsh, guess what the actual premier of Quebec said? His name is Francois Legault, and he said he's fully in support of what his buddy just said, and he decided to just throw in some good old Islamophobia on top of it. Let me see if I could pull this up to share with you here. For some reason, the screen, of course, is frozen as I say this. No, here we go. This is what Legault said. Come on, internet. You can do it. It's coming. It's coming. While this is coming up. Oh, look, there it is. Seeing people praying in the streets, in public parks, is not something we want in Quebec, Legault said in December, saying he wanted to send a very clear message to Islamists. Like, let's just pause there for a second. Sorry, let me go back up here. He wants to send a very clear message to Islamists. What are you talking about? Why every time they want to lump all Muslims together with extremists, they use this term? But he's conflating peaceful Muslims who want to pray in a park on their religious holiday, or peaceful everybody who wants to be part of a rally about Palestine. And he's like, yep, they're all terrorists. They're all Islamists. We got to send a very clear message to them that we are not tolerating their extremism. What the hell? And this guy goes on to say, if we want to pray, we go to a church, we go to a mosque. I know you can't see it. My head is covering it, but it's not moving right now. I don't know what to do. He says, if we want to pray, we go to a church, we go to a mosque, but not in public places. And he said, we don't want to do this. Yeah, I'll stop there because I can't see it because I don't know. My internet has frozen now. So that's what the premier of Quebec is saying. And one of the arguments I saw people making against all this, and I wish I could, come on, internet, work. Oh, good, it's finally working. There was a columnist who was writing for the Montreal Gazette, and they said this thing that I wanted to share with you. Here we go. One columnist said this is like using a bazooka to kill a fly. And they said this: public prayers genuinely meant to raise awareness about the deaths of thousands of innocent civilians, including far too many children, should not be treated as an existential menace to Quebec's secularism. And I think that's a really solid take on that. But this is what the defenders of the bill are saying. There's another guy I wanted to show you. His name is, I don't know, Matthew. I don't know anymore. Let's call him Matt. He's a conservative commentator who is very influential among Legault and his allies. He was very blunt about why this proposed law was necessary. And he very much used great replacement theory as his defense. And this is truly vile stuff here. But this is what this guy wrote. Why not also remember that while Quebec is a secular society and must push this secularism further, notably by banning ostentatious religious symbols in schools, it is also a historically Catholic society. Those who have a problem with this should ask themselves why they want to live here. Weird. A street prayer in front of a church or in the middle of a city center is about turning the freedom of religion offered by liberal democracy against itself. It is symbolic aggression. It is not forbidden to defend oneself. I'm sorry, if there's a street prayer in front of a church, I do not know how that affects my life. If someone is praying in the middle of a city center peacefully and like not bothering me, why am I supposed to get offended by that? Who cares? I wish every street preacher was like just keeping to themselves and praying. Like, it's a different story if they're getting in my face and annoying me about it. But if people want to pray in a city, I do not know how you see that as a threat to your freedom. I don't know. Protests that include prayer can just be a personal display of faith. It doesn't bother you. When I heard about this story, I seriously thought the government wanted to ban street preachers or unwanted religious solicitations, or maybe they're going after over-the-top religious nuisances. That is not what's going on here. What the Quebec government wants to do is the kind of religious oppression that Christian nationalists in the US pretend to experience. I just did a whole story about pretend fake Christian discrimination by the US government. Well, here is actual religious persecution by the government of Quebec. And what's been amazing is watching a whole bunch of groups who probably have nothing in common really come together and say, this is a horrible idea. The National Council of Canadian Muslims said the idea that somehow prayer in the street is a new thing or a dangerous thing is absurd. The Canadian Civil Liberties Union said banning prayer in public spaces would infringe on the freedom of religion, freedom of expression, freedom of peaceful assembly, and freedom of association. Public spaces belong to everyone, regardless of their religious beliefs. This is a statement from the Canadian Muslim Forum. A blanket ban would stigmatize communities, fuel exclusion, and undermine Quebec's social cohesion. And there was a Jewish rabbi, who said certain Jewish traditions require a body of water in nature, especially during their high holidays. And so what do you do at that point? Because if you're Jewish, you can't do those things because that would be religion in public. There was another columnist, Andre Pratt, hope I'm pronouncing it right, but that person is a journalist and a former lawmaker himself. He said it well. Let me show you this. This is also on X/Twitter. But yeah, look at this. What a sadness regarding the announced ban on street prayers. The Legault government is desperately trying to regain points in public opinion by exploiting a profitable theme, the fear of Muslims. I'm going to stop there for a second. This is something a lot of people brought up, so I want to raise it here. One reason people think that Quebec's government is proposing this law is because the ruling party in Quebec, run by Legault, is like tanking in the polls right now. I think they're in third place, and the elections are like when our midterms are next year. So they have elections next year, and the ruling party is in big trouble right now. So what do you do if you're in charge, but everyone hates you? You got to rally your base. You got to give people a reason to like you. And an easy way that conservatives in the US have found to do that is by stoking fear. It's why you see Fox News bring up caravans whenever there's an election, right? They want to remind you, hey, viewers, there are brown people. They're coming for you. And that's basically what they're doing here too. So back to what this guy was tweeting. This is how I'm going to skip down here. Let us be clear here. It is not prayers in public places that are disturbing. Catholics have been praying in public for decades and no one has ever protested, even though Quebecers have thrown religion in the trash. No, what is disturbing, he's sarcastic here, is Muslims who pray, in the same way that the ban on religious signs was really aimed only at the Muslim headscarf. In Quebec, practicing Muslims cause discomfort. They worry. They disturb. in a population that is not familiar with these practices and that has rejected religion, this discomfort is understandable, but that is no reason to violate people's fundamental rights. I appreciate that he said that. I think that's very well said. And he also added that if you're mad about traffic, people getting in the way of traffic, there are already rules. We just need to enforce them. So it's weird. It feels very much like a bizarro world version of what's happening in the United States, because Christian nationalists here have taken over our government and made it their mission to eradicate persecution of Christians, which is not a real thing. And now, one of the ways they've done that in the US is by spreading lies about Muslims and immigrants. And what does that lead to? That has led to a Muslim ban from Donald Trump. That has led to calls for Muslims to be banned from holding public office. That is the thing people on the right have called for. How many religious smears have we already heard against Zoran Mamdani in New York City, or Ilhan Omar, the congresswoman? Like, this is what the right does when they want to remind their base, hey, vote for us, otherwise brown people be taken over. And in Quebec, the officials there are using the goal of a secular government, which is a good goal, to push the same baseless attacks on the same religious minority. Really quickly, I spoke to the executive director of the British Columbia Humanist Association, and I know British Columbia is far away from Quebec, but they fought a lot of church-state battles, including national ones, and their director told me, our quest for a more secular society should target those with power, governments and institutions, rather than the individual believer just trying to live their life, which makes sense. I also spoke to the leader of the Association Humaniste du Quebec. And that guy told me, no, he loves this idea. He really wants the ban on public prayer. And what he said about, here's what he told me. We are now facing systematic provocations by Muslim activists, some of whom will deliberately call for violent actions against Jewish persons and properties. To which I say, okay, that's bad. I don't want to see violence against anyone. But also, I feel like a lot of people on the right, whenever they hear people protesting in support of Palestine and what's happening in Gaza, they just assume that is anti-Semitic. And like, there's a difference to me between protesting the Israeli government and the Israeli people. I don't have a problem with Israeli people. Their government sucks. And this guy went on to say, letting them, the Muslim activists, letting them literally occupy the public sidewalks for their own religious proselytism is not something we are going to accept. Why? Again, listen, I'm an atheist. I don't care about prayer. If Muslims want to peacefully pray, if anybody wants to peacefully pray in public, I do not know why I should waste my energy being mad about that. I don't get it. By the way, both of those two atheist groups are on different sides of Bill 21, and Bill 21 is going to be heard by the Canadian Supreme Court sometime, I think, next year. So the atheists are not on the same page on this issue. But anyway, what they are proposing to ban public prayer, that is not secularism. I feel that's a perversion of secularism, because when we talk about church-state separation, I want everyone protected under the law. I don't want any one belief system promoted by the government dominating the public square. And atheist groups, I feel, have gone out of our way to say, we don't think all faith should be driven out of life. I mean, sure, I don't like religion. I don't want you to be religious, but I am not going to use the law to forbid you from practicing your faith as long as you are playing by the same rules as everybody else. And here's this government in Quebec saying, we're doing this in the name of secularism. Our secular beliefs take precedence. Your religious ones have to stay within the privacy of your own home. You're basically like feeding the flames of religious zealots who are like, religious people are persecuted. So this is not about neutrality. This is about control. The ruling party in Quebec, they want to use state power to single out Muslims. It's not about any other group. They want to single out Muslims under the guise of order. They're taking a legitimate principle of secularism and they are weaponizing it. And I don't think that's a victory for secular values. It's a betrayal of secular values. Because you know as well as I do, certain non-Muslim groups, certain non-Muslim people, they will always be allowed to practice their faith in public. No one's going to come after them. If you're white and you're practicing your faith in Quebec, I don't think you have a lot to worry about. Anyway, I don't think this bill is going to solve anything. I think it's just going to create new problems if they actually go through with it. And I think if they do end up passing this bill, it'll eventually go to the Canadian Supreme Court, which will say this is illegal. And I know that's going to make Quebec even more desiring to separate from the rest of Canada, which is something they've wanted to do for a while as well. All right, let's stop there. What other questions we got here? As long as people aren't causing harm, embrace diversity, right? I don't know why that's a problem for people, but yes, fully agree. Does that sound like a call for violence to anyone else? You got to be more specific here. Do you mean the ban on public prayer? Is that saying if you see someone who is praying, do something about it? I don't know. Matt, the conservative columnist who was saying something. I mean, all of this rhetoric is not helpful. Again, we talked about it earlier with Charlie Kirk, but here too, when you are treating any display of religion as some sort of threat to you, you are making life worse for people who are already marginalized. I don't agree with them. I definitely don't share their faith. But again, pick and choose your battles. This is not the one to fight. Is the brown guy coming for me? He'll probably... Are you talking about me or talking about you? Probably just hug us, tell us we can get through this together, something nice like that. Listen, if I'm coming after you, of course I'll just give you a hug. I mean, I'll talk shit about you behind your back, but like, you got nothing to worry about. I like your governor in Illinois. Pritzker seems awesome. Did a great job on Jon Stewart's show. Yeah, I will tell you right now, I mean, in the circles I'm in and the groups I am in, given what Donald Trump is doing, given what he wants to do in cities that have a lot of Black people, like Chicago, I am so grateful we have a governor who is not Gavin Newsom, who is just trying to get attention and just he loves trying to ride the media waves. Pritzker just is solid. He's saying the right things. He's not flashy. He wouldn't be good if he was trying to be flashy because it would come off as disingenuous. But I'm grateful we have a decent governor. I hope he runs for president. I think he would be a pretty solid candidate if he decided to run. He is rich enough to run against someone like Donald Trump. We're lucky to have him here right now. All right, you do the trivia question. I'm going to get rid of these things and move on to the next story. Give me a minute here. All right, I got a few more stories for you. I know we're running late. It happens. I want to show you this couple right here. This is Blair and Taylor Edwards, and this couple is going to jail. And I want to tell you why they're going to jail. They are two Christian parents who gave birth to a baby in 2023, gave birth to baby Hayden, little boy. And as soon as Hayden was born, everything was fine for 2 days. And on the morning of day 2 of his life, Hayden stopped eating. His lips turned blue. Hours later, he stopped breathing. And his mother, I guess, poured cold water on him and he started breathing again. But 30 minutes later, he was dead. Basically, there were 5 hours or so that passed between something is wrong with our baby and the baby is no longer with us. Now, what would you do if you were a parent during those 5 hours? The right answer is to call the doctor, call the hospital, call 911, whatever you need to do because this baby needs help. That is not what these parents did. The Edwards decided to call their friends and family so they could all come over to the house and pray for the baby and pour some oil on the baby. And that is all they did. And the reason they did that is because all of these people are members of the Followers of Christ Church in Oregon. And that is a church that teaches you that faith healing is the way to fix everything. Prayers fix everything. You don't need medical interventions for anything. And here's the wild thing about this church, if you have not heard of it. In 30 years, this is from an article from Oregon Public Broadcasting. I want to make sure I have this here. Yeah, check this out right here. Over the past 3 decades, at least 21 children from this church, their families are part of this church. Over the past 3 decades, at least 21 children have died as a result of members of the church not seeking medical care. 21 kids in 30 years from the same church have died the same way as baby Hayden. So that's what's going on at this church. It got so bad at this church that in 2011, Oregon lawmakers are like, it's kind of weird that we allow faith healing to be an exemption to our laws against homicide. Apparently, it was always okay to kill someone as long as you did it as an act of faith and you were trying to heal them. But they died, and they didn't have to, but they did. And this was just fine. No one got prosecuted for what this church did for years. And in 2011, they passed a law saying maybe we shouldn't let faith healing be a get out of jail free card. And since that law was passed in 2011, guess what happened at this church? 3 couples from the same church have gone to jail. They were prosecuted for killing their own kids. So 21 kids died in the past 3 decades, but at least 3 others in the past 1 decade ever since this law went into effect, which means it's still happening, but the rate is slowing down. So yay. Anyway, most of those parents were not sent to prison, though, because the law wasn't in place then. So here's the thing. The Edwards that I showed you earlier that killed baby Hayden, guess how long they are going to jail now? 30 days. That's it. Why 30 days? Why only 30 days? The reason is basically that when the prosecutors were going after the family, like the medical examiners who looked at the case and they looked at baby Hayden, they all said, look, this baby suffered from jaundice. Jaundice can be cured. If you take the baby to a hospital, it is possible that the baby will recover. However, they could not say definitively that if the Edwards took their baby to the hospital, the baby would be alive today. They could not say that with certainty, which means Hayden may have died regardless of what happened. So that's one thing to consider. And because of that, I should say the Edwards pleaded guilty to first-degree criminal mistreatment, which is a felony. They could have gotten 5 years in jail each, but they got 30 days. But here's another reason they got such a light sentence. They're going to be on probation for 5 years. They are going to be monitored by the government to make sure their children, by the way, they have 2 children. Then they had baby Hayden. Baby Hayden died. Then they had another child in the past year. Like, thank goodness that kid did not have any hospitalization needs. But they're going to be on probation for 5 years. And there's going to be a monitor to make sure their 3 other kids are getting regular medical care. And a probation officer or a Department of Human Services official can speak with the kid's doctor during this entire time period. And the couple has already signed a release so that medical documents about the kids can be shown to the probation officer. And if the couple has another kid or adopts another kid, they have 72 hours to inform the probation officer and take the child to a doctor. So basically, the government is saying we're going to force you for 5 years to make sure you're looking after your kids the way normal parents do. And they agreed to that, which is a good start. And also, I mean, I guess if they already have 3 kids, I guess the state and the court thought taking away these parents for 5 years would do more harm to their existing kids than just letting them raise those kids with supervision. And I guess there's some sense to that, even though I don't love it. And here's the other thing that the couple did to get their lenient 30-day sentence. They issued a statement before the verdict was basically read, I think. And here's what they said. The husband said this out loud in court. He said he and his wife should have reached out for medical care when Hayden went into distress. And then he acknowledged that medical care is important. He said, "We do understand that medical intervention can be necessary to preserve and enhance life. We accept the need to have our children have the necessary medical care for their health, for their well-being and health." And get this, he also said, even though they cannot force their church to do anything, their church members to do anything they don't want to do, he said he and his wife ask the members of our church to take our loss as motivation and ask you to reach out for medical intervention and care for the physical well-being of your children. So a heartfelt plea to the others in their church, hey guys, I know what we are taught here, but go take your kids to a doctor. And I want to take that seriously. Like, I think that is an important thing for them to say. But when I was researching all this, it turns out in 2018, one of those 3 other couples that has also killed off their own kid from this church, one of the other couples, they are the Mitchells. And in 2018, the Mitchells were sentenced to over 6 years in prison for what they did. Because their daughter was born premature. She suffered from a medical condition. She could have been saved if they took her to a hospital, but they did not. And when they were having their sentencing, guess what the Mitchells said to the court? Check this out from an article right here. In an unusual development, the Mitchells not only acknowledged their failure to provide necessary medical care for their newborn, but also said in a statement read aloud by one of their lawyers that everyone in the church should always seek adequate medical care for our children. So it turns out the Mitchells also made a statement to their church colleagues saying, you guys, we got to take our kids to the doctor. And then the Edwards are like, hey, we are part of this church. We just had a baby. You know what we're going to do? Ignore your advice because everyone knows none of us care about it. So I ask this, like, this couple got a short prison sentence of 30 days, in part because they said in front of the whole court, hey, we are telling our church, don't do what we did. Go take your kids to a doctor. But it is very clear that the people at this church do not actually take that message seriously. Everyone at this church is like, yeah, it's cool. Go ahead and lie to the court. Get a smaller sentence. We're fine with it. We're not going to listen to that. And more kids have died even after these disclaimers and warnings have been issued. I don't know why that sort of statement is part of any plea deal if you're the prosecutor. I don't think they should be included. I guess the big takeaway here, what happened to Hayden is not an isolated incident. Like, this is what happens when you have this toxic religious ideology that is willing to sacrifice children on the altar of superstition. If you think prayer is better than medicine, your children are going to become collateral damage because you're waging some war against reality. And you will notice when it comes to faith healing churches, it's never the adults who are sick and praying for themselves to heal and then they die. Because honestly, fine. If that's your decision and that's the path you want to take, so be it. It's always their kids who are the victims here. Like, that's the problem with faith healing. It's just negligence. It is not religion. It's the rejection of knowledge that saves lives. And it always ends with like baby-sized coffins. And until the church decides that children are more precious than their own ignorance, more kids who belong to families in this church are going to suffer the same fate. I don't want that to happen because apparently I care about these kids more than their own parents do. All right, we'll stop there with that story. What other questions we got here? We need separation of church and medicine. Seriously, like, this is the problem with anti-vaxxers too. Like, if only it was about your personal health and safety, I'd be like, I want you to get vaccinated because I think it's good for you. But when other people don't get vaccinated, it hurts all of us because these people don't understand how herd immunity works. They don't understand how viruses work because they've always been against science. It's very frustrating. Well, obviously, these parents didn't pray hard enough. Yep, that was the problem right there. So parental neglect charges anyway? That's their argument too. They're like, we did care for our baby. That is why we prayed multiple times in the span of a few hours when our baby was not breathing. It's interesting that they think it's God's will if the kid dies, but the consequences are not God's will. Yeah, I mean, God wanted them to go to jail. Why are you fighting it? Why are you even asking for a plea deal? Just take what the judge gives you. It's part of God's plan. So the church is used to ignoring the CYA, the cover your ass statements. I mean, yes, because more than one family has said the same thing in court, probably to decrease their time in prison, and no one in the church seems to be listening. All right, do your trivia question. I'm going to jump to the next story. Give me a minute here. One more second here. I'm pulling up some last things. Okay. I know I have talked about this book many times by now. I think I've made 2 separate videos about this book right here, The War on Science by Lawrence Krauss. But all the people who contributed to this book are still saying stupid things. And I feel like, all right, well, I feel like I have to respond to this stuff. So I will post links to my earlier videos about this stupid book in the show notes, in the description below. But basically, if you're not familiar, this is a book that recently came out. It's edited by the scientist Lawrence Krauss, and it's called The War on Science. And let me go back to the title here. It says 39 renowned scientists and scholars speak out about the current threats to free speech, open inquiry, and the scientific process. So this whole book is about the war on science. And it includes Richard Dawkins and Jerry Coyne, Peter Boghossian, Steven Pinker, and for some reason, Jordan Peterson, because why would you be in a book if Jordan Peterson were contributing to it? But the point I've made in my previous videos is if you were going to write a book called The War on Science in 2025, what would you write about? Because right now, Donald Trump is dismantling like our science infrastructure in the country. He is stripping funding from universities that do basic vital research. He is appointing conspiracy theorists like RFK Jr. to be in charge of our nation's health. He is defunding the National Institutes of Health. He's denying climate change, etc. So what does this book focus on? wokeness, black people, DEI. These are the real war fighters that are trying to destroy science in the country. Like, it's an entire book about the problem with wokeness. And it's published, by the way, by a right-wing publisher. So that's how seriously you should take this book. So anyway, I've written about this before. I've said plenty about this. I did want to point out a couple things that have happened since the last time I talked about it. I really enjoyed this piece in New York Magazine by Sarah Jones, who said there are nearly 40 chapters in the War on Science, all pockmarked by omissions, misrepresentations, and sometimes obvious lies. Each section of the anthology addresses a different facet of the woke threat to reason, but a few common obsessions emerge: genitals and what people do with them, Israel, DEI, and various professional insults. It's all here. Boomer Facebook on every page. There you go. Love that. She also pointed out, and I think correctly so here, here we go. The writers are too caught up in their resentment to acknowledge reality. They do not grasp their own role in the global rise of the illiberal right. They want to debate as long as they dictate the terms. And what they are saying by that is, when you are saying the problem, the war on science is being waged by wokeness, by people who care too much about trans people or giving opportunities to racial minorities because they've had it too good for too long. When you focus on that, you are harming science, not helping it, they say. When you say that as a scientist, what do you think you are doing to the right-wing anti-science people, the science deniers out there? You are just giving them fodder. How many times have we now heard Christian preachers and conservative columnists say, you know who else doesn't like trans people? Richard Dawkins, the atheist. We disagree on a lot of things, but on trans people, even Richard Dawkins is with us. And that's what they're doing with these people when it comes to science. Because you have creationists, you have right-wing anti-climate people who are like, you know who else agrees with us that climate change or that we shouldn't care about this because there are real bigger problems elsewhere? It's all of these dudes. So, like, yeah, they're making life worse for people who actually care about science. This is a total side note, but I have tried desperately over the past couple of weeks to know, because this book has been out for 1 month now or so. I want to know how many copies of this book are sold. Somewhere out here, watching this video maybe, is either an author or an agent or a book publisher who has access to that kind of information. I am begging you, send me an email. I'll keep you anonymous. I want to know how many copies of this book have sold, because I want to know if like 12 copies have sold, because I don't think it's a bestseller. So what's the answer? I'm dying to know. Someone has to know. Get me that answer. Anyway, I would also point out the reason I wanted to bring this up today, because I've said all of this before already in previous videos, but the reason I want to bring it up here is because since the book has come out over the past month, a lot of the people who contributed to this book have been criticized by people who are like, you wrote a book on the war on science and you didn't focus at all on what Donald Trump is doing. How do you not go after Trump in a book on the war on science? How are trans people your enemy right now? Do you know what is happening in your field? And all of them are now giving basically the same explanations everywhere they go. And I'll start with Lawrence Krauss himself. He wrote an article for Reason magazine. Check this out. America's two-front, a war on science. Let's see how he opens this piece. There is currently a two-pronged attack on higher education, research, and scholarship in the United States. Activists inside universities have hijacked many administrative functions, and significant reform is needed to ensure free speech, open inquiry, and the integrity of scholarship. But the Trump administration has used this fact to launch what maybe, I'm not sure, but it might be a more dangerous direct attack on university science and research infrastructure across the nation. So you guys, trans people annoy Lawrence Krauss, but it's possible that Donald Trump is also doing some bad stuff. Both sides. You've got to be shitting me. Who's doing more damage to science? The guy who is single-handedly just saying, I'm not giving billions of dollars for research that Congress already allocated to this university because I don't like them because they're Ivy Leagues? Or is it people who are like, we should try giving STEM scholarships to underrepresented groups? He's like, both sides are bad. This is how dumb these people are. In his head, Trump decimating our nation's scientific infrastructure may be a more dangerous direct attack on science. By the way, he has also said this over and over. I want to show you some of these Lawrence Krauss tweets because, again, just stupid. Look at this. This is in response to someone. The book was written before Trump was elected, but we have added little bits, acknowledging what is going on. But there is a difference. One is an external threat, and we are focusing on threats from within. But their title is not the war on science. That doesn't really matter right now because we got bigger problems. You guys, the book was written before Trump was in office. It was written before the inauguration. So how would we know he was going to do bad things? As another writer said, it seems like Lawrence Krauss was in a coma for 8 years if you don't know what Trump was going to do. I am not a scientist. I knew exactly what Trump would do. Here's Lawrence Krauss again. It was written before Trump, but in fact, we added some addenda on this. You guys, he put in a little afterword where he's like, yeah, everything we said. Trump is bad too. There's one more right here. This is him promoting that Reason magazine piece I just showed you. My newest piece on the two-pronged war on science just appeared in Reason magazine. Yes, it is two-pronged. The new book, which was written before Trump was elected, deals with the first. But an external attack has occurred that may be more damaging. Like, seriously, how are you a science communicator who has no idea what the Trump administration planned to do with science if they got into office again? By the way, Krauss went on the Federalist podcast to promote his book. The Federalist, another right-wing website, because again, this is his audience now. It's just right-wing crazy people and not actual people who care about science, because they know they're not playing to an audience of scientists. So another guy who contributed to the book, his name is Martin Boudry. This is what he wrote on Substack. Check this out. When there is rampant crime in the neighborhood and the community leaders look the other way, it creates the perfect opening for a sweeping police crackdown. In the same vein, the incursions of left-wing ideology in universities and other academic institutions have helped to turn them into prime targets for the populist right. If you turn universities and academic journals into partisan lobby groups, don't be shocked when you find yourself in the political crosshairs. And we'll pause there for a second. He's basically saying, hey, liberals on college campuses, do you not like what the Trump administration is doing to you? Well, what were you wearing? What did you do to make them so mad at you? This is your fault. You shouldn't have been annoying and accuse half of the people contributing to this book of sexual harassment. Or at least Lawrence Krauss of Arizona. He's basically blaming people on the left for what Trump is doing, which again is stupid because anyone who has followed what conservative politics have been like for the past decade or 7, or you have followed Donald Trump over the past decade, you knew he's been waging a war against science for years. The right has been waging a war against science for decades. They just never had an entire administration who was like, yeah, do whatever you want. We'll support you. And now they can get away with it. That's the difference. But they've been broadcasting what they wish they could do with science forever. So what is this idea that, hey, liberals who annoy me, you're the problem here. It's your fault that they're mad at you. No, the Trump administration was going to do this no matter what. It's like Trump administration going after universities claiming they are anti-Semitic because they allow protests about Gaza. It's like, no, he was always going to find some reason to go after colleges he doesn't like. The right hates higher education, even though all of them went to like Yale or Harvard Law School. They hate higher education. They want to decimate the most powerful education institutions out there. The right hates public schools. That's why they want to give money to private religious schools. They're always going to make up a reason to say we can't have public schools have this money. We can't give research funding to private institutions. You think they need a reason? No, they don't. They're going to do that anyway. And you think they're serious when they say, well, we have to take money away from you because, you know, progressives are doing something we don't like. How dumb do you have to be to think it's the left's fault for what the right is doing right now? But again, this is what Boudry said later on. Yes, it is true that Trump's assault on universities is both reprehensible and unconstitutional. That is, professed concern about anti-Semitism is just a pretext for owning the libs, and that his sudden embrace of academic freedom is disingenuous. Oh my God, this guy kind of gets it. He just wants to swap one orthodoxy for another. But that is exactly why we should have cleaned our Augean stable. I don't know how to pronounce the word before it came to this. No, he had it. He was so close. And then he threw it all away. This has nothing to do with the left. The right was always going to do this. And how dumb do you have to be to blame the left for having anything to do with this? There's one other thing he wrote that I wanted you to laugh at with me. Check this out. This is from the same dude Substack. And it's the same statement that Lawrence Krauss had pretty much. In the time between the writing and publishing of our book, however, Donald Trump was reelected as president and started to launch a very different kind of war on science of his own, cracking down on prestigious institutions, slashing research funding on anything that smacks of progressive causes, and threatening scientific journals to scrap DEI initiatives and reinstate strict meritocracy. So, this is again, he's so close to getting it. So, is it true, as the kids say, that our book didn't age well, becoming cringeworthy and out of touch even before it hits the shelves? How could we have been so oblivious to the looming right-wing assault on science while we were preoccupied with left-wing critiques? And then his answer is, well, it's your fault, the left. You annoyed us. And so the right's mad about it. It's your fault. Again, what were you wearing? What did you do that made him hit you? It's just that argument. Again, it never occurs to these people that the right has been wanting to dismantle the scientific establishment forever. They've been fantasizing about it for decades. They've been broadcasting it for decades. They just never had the total power to get away with it until now, because the entire Republican Party in office doesn't want to fight them. And they're just bending over backwards to let Robert F. Kennedy Jr. do whatever he wants. And they're not going to say Trump is doing anything bad because it's a cult. Like, wokeness is not the problem. Wokeness is just the Republican scapegoat for doing whatever it is they wanted to do anyway. I want to show you another one from Jerry Coyne, because he said he's been getting a lot of shit for this, which he totally deserves. But this is the argument he made on his website, saying the book came together before Trump was elected. This is what he said. This book was put together before Trump began his assault on universities by punishing science grantees and by appointing people like RFK Jr. to science positions. I expected that after this unpredictable bout of executive branch bullying, there would be some wokesters who adopted a whataboutery stance saying this book largely comprises attacks on how the progressive left wing is eroding science, but Trump is doing much more damage from the right. And right now, that is indeed the case. We are right. But this is the dumbest thing, I swear to you, I have read in a long time. Jerry Coyne is not just a PhD scientist. He's written genuinely good books about science. But look at what he says here. Right now, that is indeed the case. But Trump will be gone in a bit over 3 years. And I expect that when Democrats take over, fingers crossed, the government will cut back strongly on interfering in the funding and production. The effect of the right on science, then, will probably be more temporary. In contrast, that from the left will last a lot longer. For progressive professors who believe in nonsense like a spectrum of sex and animals will teach this nonsense to their students, and thus it will pass among academic generations. We simply cannot sit by and let progressives distort science in the cause of ideology, regardless of what the right is doing. Oh my God. First of all, as someone who follows politics, the idea that Trump is going to be gone in 3 years is wishful thinking. I mean, one, Trump is not going to leave office if he is able to stay. Again, what do you think is going to stop him from staying in office if he wants? The Constitution? It's not doing us much good right now. But second, even if Trump leaves, why wouldn't another Republican just take his spot? You think Democrats have their shit together to win a presidential election? No, they don't. I wish they did. The Democratic Party is very much broken right now. So this idea that Democrats will win in 3 years, no, not necessarily. I hope, but I don't think they have what it takes right now. But also, this idea that if Democrats do regain the presidency, and notice he doesn't say the House and Senate, just the presidency, that what? They're going to magically snap their fingers and undo what Trump did? As a scientist, Jerry Coyne should know that's not how it works at all. You can't undo what they are doing right now. Because right now, scientists cannot study, they don't have the funding to study mRNA vaccines. What do you think is going to happen in 3 years if there's another outbreak, another pandemic? You can't just magically whip together the research in 10 minutes. At least the US cannot. We're not going to have the technology available. What happens if we don't address climate change now? It's going to get worse and theoretically irreversible. That would be bad. What if there's, and this has happened, some universities said they had to pause long-term research that had been going on because the Trump administration just cut their funding. If you end long-term, decades-long research, you can't just pick up where you left off in a few years. And since he talked about students, let's say there are grad students who want to study some of this stuff, but guess what? Too bad. Your department no longer has the funding to pay you a stipend to do your research. What do you think those grad students are going to do? Are they going to stay in the US, go to that school, study that field? No. Maybe they go to another country to continue their research and we have a brain drain in the US. Or maybe they switch fields because, you know what? I wanted to be a scientist. There's no future in it for me because I can't get the funding I need to study this stuff. I'll go into something else. So no, you can't just magically reverse the harm Trump is doing in a few years. So this idea from Coyne that everything is temporary is bullshit. It is permanent damage that is going to hurt all of us. I don't get how he doesn't know that. By the way, he's also criticized his critics like me because he said we didn't even read the damn book. But the thing is, and I've said this before, the one thing they released months before the book was published was the table of contents. And it turns out most of the essays in this book were published online somewhere over the past few years. And this is just a compilation of essays that are already online. So yeah, we can read those essays. We can read the content of this book, even if we didn't have a physical copy of the book with us. How do you not know that? How is Coyne this bad at interneting that he doesn't know this stuff? So all of these people They all have some variation of the same argument. Trump is bad. Sure, we acknowledge that. But the left is way worse. And look, we totally would have criticized Trump way more if we were writing these chapters today. But sorry, I turned in my draft 10 minutes before the inauguration happened. So how was I supposed to know Trump was going to be this bad? Here's a suggestion. Maybe you should have listened to all those progressives that you guys criticize instead of laughing at them and mocking them and ignoring them and blaming them for all the problems with science. Because I promise you, people on the left and progressives knew exactly what the Trump administration was going to do, and we knew it for years before he got reelected this time around. What do you think Project 2025 was? That thing came out in 2023. When I wrote about Project 2025, it was in 2023, and they said they were going to, they said the Biden administration's climate fanaticism will need a whole of government unwinding. They said the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, which includes the National Weather Service, needs to be dismantled because it's one of the main drivers of the climate change alarm industry. They called for limiting access to abortion drugs by lying about its safety and efficacy. It said the CDC should stop compiling information about gender identity, basically because it legitimizes trans identities. They wanted to do away with vaccine mandates, and they wanted to prohibit research into vaccines because they claimed falsely that it used stem cells from aborted fetuses. Like, I knew that was going to happen 2 years before Trump came into office because that's what he said he was going to do. How did these professional scientists and science communicators have no clue about any of this? And if you don't know any of this, maybe that's a sign you should stop living in this right-wing bubble you are living in, where the biggest war on science are coming from like blue-haired college students who annoy you and professors who acknowledge a spectrum of sex, because guess what? That's what the science shows. Like, you could have written about the Republican Party's assault on science anytime in the past several decades, and it would have been relevant at any moment there because they've been doing this forever. And it's always been worse than whatever you think DEI is doing to science now. To pretend you had no idea this was going to happen is an admission that these scientists, these renowned scientists, do not understand what is happening in the fields in which they claim to be experts. And that's before you even mention Jordan Peterson. So here's my suggestion. Here's what they should have done when they submitted this book. If they submitted these drafts before Trump was inaugurated, and Lawrence Krauss says, don't worry, I added in a little bit about Trump. Here's what it should have said. The chapters in this book deal with dumb shit that annoys us, but it pales in comparison to what Trump is doing today. We are supposed to be experts in science communication, but we chose to focus entirely on why liberals are ruining science while barely mentioning what conservatives are up to. Shut up about it. We promise we will include some bits of Trumpy criticism somewhere, maybe at the end after the Peterson chapter. Anyway, let me tell you about my dear friend Jeffrey Epstein. That one's just for Lawrence Krauss. By the way, when I brought this up to Lawrence Krauss, or at least he responded to me on Twitter, this is what he shared with me. He's not a fan of mine. I guess you haven't read the other bunch of pieces I have written over the past year, or even the addenda I wrote in the book originally completed before Trump's election. If you looked at the book at all, you twit. Warning, though, there are big words. You might need ChatGPT. Lawrence Krauss is calling me a twit because I told him his book is dumb. Because it is. So look, the war on science, it's not a defensive reason. It's like this monument to intellectual cowardice, because these authors, all they have are these petty grievances about pronouns and diversity programs, and people don't respect them anymore, and people don't look to them for advice on what to do about science, because for various reasons, this whole book, as I've mentioned in other videos, it's a collection of people who have been saying stupid things about trans people for years, or they have been canceled for being racists or sexist or creeps on campuses. Like, they act like the biggest problem in science involved grad students asking for inclusion, or professors acknowledging biological complexity, or STEM scholarships going to underrepresented groups. And to publish this book now, I mean, if you're Lawrence Krauss, and this book was written before the Trump inauguration, but it's going to come out like 8 months after his inauguration, why not just go to the publisher and say, look, it seemed like a good idea at the time, but I'm going to give you back your advance. We're not publishing this book anymore because it's not good. He's not going to do that. So to publish this book now in the face of the Republican sabotage against science, it's not just ridiculous, it's malpractice for these people who claim to be scientists and great science communicators. Like, everyone involved should be embarrassed. I mean, and that's saying something if you're Jordan Peterson. Like, every page wasted on performative outrage over wokeness is a page that could have been used to explain to the right-wing readers they are appealing to that there is a real ongoing destruction of the scientific world. And given that these authors have spent the past few years appealing to conservatives, like, that could have been really useful. Instead, they're pretending that progressives are the threat to science, and these people are giving cover to those who are actually dismantling our institutions. So they created this book of propaganda for right-wing losers to use to further hurt the scientific world. Like, you're not going to be able to undo this. So these scientists are basically seeding the destruction of this field that they claim to love so much. All right, I'll stop there. Any other questions here? I know we're going forever, aren't we? An accusation from them is an admission. Very much so. Yeah. I don't have anything to add. Thank you for that donation, but I agree. I still don't understand what the fuck they mean by wokeness. It is slang for things that annoy them, like people calling them sex predators. That's what wokeness means, if you're Krauss. It's the left wing's fault the right is attacking them, like a big brother hitting you with your own hand and saying, stop hitting yourself. Good analogy. Yup, that's pretty much what they're saying. So the war on science isn't being waged by climate change deniers, young earthers, anti-vaxxers, etc. Nope. It's being waged by the scientists in laboratories who are like, we can do better than what we're doing now. Staying woke means staying educated in a changing world. I like that definition. That's very good. All right, one last one. I'm going to get to one last story, and then we will call it a night, I swear. Sorry, I'm going forever here. Going to close up some tabs. Okay. That the answer? All right. This one may be a short story, but I just wanted to share some data with you that that just got published. So the backstory here is when it came to the 2024 election, Kamala Harris got the support. And I want to show you these actual numbers here because the Pew Research Center broke it down by religion. And if you look up here, 2024, look down at the unaffiliateds. You could see, what did atheists say? 83% of atheists at the top of your screen there voted for Kamala Harris. 15% of atheists voted for Donald Trump. What about agnostics? 79% voted for Harris, 18% for Donald Trump. But what about the nothing in particular group? These are the ones who are like, well, I don't have a religious label. I might believe there's something out there, but I don't think I'm an atheist. What about those people? It was 60 to 38 in favor of Kamala Harris. The point is, there's a big difference between how atheists vote and how, like, other nuns, N-O-N-E-S, how other nuns vote. And one of the frustrating things every time you see these types of surveys is that sometimes the number of non-religious respondents are so small that they kind of lump us all together. You'll see, like, here's what Protestants said, here's what Jewish people said, here's what the nuns said. And it's like, oh, don't lump us together. We're very different on a lot of these issues. Just to mention a couple other ones, 95% of atheists say abortion should be legal in all or most cases. 95%. 94% of agnostics say the same thing. What happens when you just poll nothing in particular? Only 80%, 80. What about acceptance of homosexuality? People who think, yeah, you can be gay. It's fine. 93% of atheists, 95% of agnostics say it's fine. Yeah, those are the numbers. I did not reverse them. I think there's a margin of error thing going on there, but it's in the mid 90s. Only 82% of the nuns basically say the same thing. So I never like it when they say like 29% of America. That's the number we're at right now. 29% of America is a nun. They have no religious affiliation. You may have seen headlines over the past few years that the NONES nuns are the fastest growing religious demographic in America. And you're thinking, wow, if 29% of the country has no religious affiliation and the percentage of white evangelical Christians is going down, maybe that means we could get somewhere politically. Maybe we're going to outnumber them. And the thing is, not quite, because of that 29%, a very small group is atheist and a very small group is agnostic. Most of that 29% are these, I'm wishy-washy, I can't make up my mind about stuff. Anyway, I bring that up because the Pew Research Center recently published this new report about the nuns around the world. And basically they wanted to see, what do American nuns say compared to Swedish nuns and French nuns? Like, are all the nuns the same? And also, what's the difference within a country on all these issues? And some of this was kind of surprising to me. I wanted to share this one with you. Look at this. In Sweden, 52% of adults are nuns, but about half of them believe not in God. Oh, this is about like who's really secular. So they asked the nuns, 52% of adults in Sweden are nuns. Only about half of them, they don't believe in God. They don't believe in an afterlife. They don't believe in the existence of something spiritual beyond this world. So in a sense, even though half the people in Sweden have no religious affiliation, only about half of them actually are secular in the ways you and I might think is secular. Like, yeah, I don't believe in God. I don't believe in supernatural stuff. Okay, where's the US here? Let us keep scrolling. In the US, 29% of the country has no religious affiliation, but only 8% of us don't believe in any supernatural stuff, which seems really low. Like, only 8% of us in the US are right about God and the afterlife and things like that, which puts us way down in the pack compared to other countries. And that is an interesting difference. Look at some of these other places here that are really interesting. In Chile, 33% of the country has no religious affiliation, but only 3% don't believe in the supernatural stuff, which means a whole bunch of people in Chile who are non-religious still believe in something spiritual, which is just an interesting way of looking at this that I'd never considered. Here's another thing that's interesting, another picture here. How do nuns actually identify? I'm going to scroll down to the US here. Again, the total for the US at the top of your screen here adds up to 29, because 29% of the United States is non-religious. But you could see on the far left where it says 5%, only 5% of us are atheists. 6% of us are agnostic. 19% of us are something wishy-washy, none of the above. I believe in something out there. Okay, but it is interesting to look at what those numbers are like elsewhere. Look in Japan. 55% of the country has no religious affiliation, but nearly all of them are like the wishy-washy, I believe in something spiritual people. Is there any country here where the majority of people are atheists? Look at France. 44% of people are non-religious, are nuns, but 21% are atheists. Big difference in how that country goes. Italy, 23% are non-religious, but 11% are atheists. What was the one I wanted to show you here? Greece and Italy are the only two countries where atheists make up a plurality of the nuns. And in Italy, it's not even half. In Greece, it's just above half. So in most of these places, most of their non-religious people believe in something supernatural. And some way more than others. Here's another fascinating result I just want to show you here. In this one, in Brazil and Colombia, let me zoom in here a little bit. What percentage of adults say they believe in God among different subgroups of nuns? So in Brazil, nearly all of their nuns believe in God, which is interesting. Like Brazil, very spiritual. In Colombia, in Peru, in Mexico, even though all these people say they believe in nothing in particular, most of them believe in God. Look in the US, 62% of our nuns believe in God or some higher power of sorts. Is that, yeah, say they believe in God. 4% of atheists in the US believe in God. 24% of agnostics believe in God. Who are the 4% of atheists who believe in God? I feel like there's a communication problem somewhere along the line. And one last difference between the countries I want to show you right here. This is an interesting question. What percent of religiously unaffiliated adults say that the country's majority's religious teachings have influence on the laws of their country? What percent of people say, yes, the majority religious groups' beliefs have influence on our country and should have influence on our country? In the US, 70% of people say the Bible has influence on the laws of our country. And we're only talking about the nuns here, only about the religiously unaffiliated adults. So 70% of the nuns say, yeah, the Bible has a lot of influence on our laws. Only 20% of the nuns say it should have that influence on our laws, which is a difference of 50%, which is the biggest difference among all these countries that they studied, which is interesting because in the US, first of all, does the Bible influence our laws? Like the answer is yeah. That's what Christian nationalism is all about. And why do so few people say it should have influence on our laws? Because we've seen the impact of Christian nationalism and we don't like it. Whereas in these other countries, the gap gets much, much smaller because they don't have the problems that we're having in the US, where one religion gets to dominate how the rest of us get to live our lives. In the UK, 38% of the nuns say, yeah, religion influences our country, but only 9% say it should. But that's a much smaller gap right there. On the flip side, in like Brazil and Colombia and Peru, where even their nuns believe in God, more people say religion should influence their country's laws, which again is just an interesting difference that I wanted to point out there. I think overall, and I'll post the link for this in the description so you could see all these for yourself. A lot of this is not surprising to those of us who have followed these surveys over the years, but I think it still shows how the US nuns, we are not a cohesive block of secular thinkers. We're a very fragmented coalition, many of whom still cling to spiritual or supernatural ideas. And so I think that's worth keeping in mind whenever you see headlines suggesting there is a surge of secularism. Like the reality is only a small fraction of us in the US, 8% of us, are truly non-religious in a consistent, rational sense. And that matters because it affects how much influence we have when it comes to shaping policy and fighting Christian nationalism and advocating for science and reason and human rights. Basically, just because there are a lot of nuns in your country does not mean you are necessarily a secular country. I mean, it's, for example, and we heard this a lot this week, it is a lot harder to convince people that thoughts and prayers don't make for good public policy when even 55% of nuns say they pray, which is what this survey found. So for atheists, I think this data, it is a challenge. It's also a call to action because it shows that if you want to live in a truly secular society, it's going to require a lot more than just trying to up the number of people who check other on a survey when you are asked about your religion. It requires outreach and education and visible representation of atheists in the public eye so that atheism is understood and respected and appealing to people. Like, seriously, Sydney Sweeney, come out as an atheist. It would help us all. I don't know, nuns in general, at least in the US, we are generally aligned on reproductive rights and LGBTQ acceptance and church state separation, generally speaking. But there are a lot of us who believe in evidence-free nonsense. And that means, I mean, if nuns are like, yeah, I believe in prayer, it makes me wonder what other irrational things you might believe in too. All right, I will stop there with this one. What other questions we got here? Was this on Pew? Yes, this is a Pew Research Center survey, and I'll have the link down below in the description. Still confused. Atheists who believe in God? Yeah, man, I don't know. I don't know why. It's always weird when they're like, I'm an atheist, but I believe in heaven. It's like, who are you? Why are you? I don't know. To say only 8% have it right is like Christians saying they're the only ones who have it right. I know, and I've gotten that criticism before. It's very arrogant of atheists to say they know it. The difference is I am right. Thanks for that donation. In Australia, a lot of my spiritual but not religious friends are getting sucked in by right-wing propaganda. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of spiritual but not religious people, even in the US, who will tell you like they take their astrological sign seriously, even though that's all bullshit. Or they, again, everyone has their supernatural, irrational blind spots, but the fear, and this is the thing you are pointing out that I'm worried about. If you are willing to be irrational in certain aspects when it comes to religion, when you're spiritual but not religious, my worry is that it doesn't take much to lure you into something else that is irrational, like right-wing propaganda. That's why you see a lot of younger people who might have been like new atheists back in the day. You see them believing a lot of right-wing bullshit because they're eager to belong to something. They want to believe in this stuff, and they're not really rational at the core. Even rational is a dirty word in some ways. All right. Thank you for watching. I know it's a long one today. I had a lot to catch up on. Thank you, Den, for sticking around and helping me. I always appreciate it. Thank you for watching. And I will see you next Thursday night at my usual time. All right. I'm ending the stream now. Thanks, everybody.